You don't.
Well, first of all, you never.
First of all, coming out to North Dakota.
First of all, you would never text me back. I was texting you for like months. Finally, this guy texted me back. It's like, this isn't Marshall. You keep texting me. I'm going to report you. I was like, ooh, that's
sorry.
You know, it would have
been a 406 number, my old one.
Maybe. So this guy was pissed off that I was texting.
By the way, do you know where any mule deer are in North Dakota?
Okay, I understand you're mad, but before you report
I have
me,
you on the phone.
Yeah, that's funny, dude. And we're back. HUNTR Podcast.
Hey. Yeah, welcome back.
Hey, episode 16. Yeah. Jeez, how about that? Episode 16, man. Just like that. Having a run at it here with some guests, you know? Why not, right?
Why not? Yeah.
Why not?
Why not? Well, so the Dakotas are happening, sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, that's the basis of this podcast is like, we are going mule deer hunting in the Dakotas this year.
Yeah.
Again.
For sure, at least North Dakota.
Correct.
Still, we're pretty sure South Dakota is going to happen, but got to figure out some details.
So I think we mentioned that on the past podcast that we recently got drawn for North Dakota any deer bow tag, which basically qualifies us to go and archery hunt mule deer in North Dakota, which you and I went and did that last year for the first time. Freaking incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Tons of bucks. Killed 2 in 2 days.
Yeah.
And we're packed up, ready to roll.
All kind of like full circle stuff happening with the Dakotas right now. Like we just drew in North Dakota again.
Going right back to the same place we went before. Not going to tell you where.
Yep. We just figured out a potential lease in South Dakota, which we'll get into is required. There's no public land hunting the same week.
Correct. Yeah.
So you have to find a private land option if you want to do the same time frame.
Well, we thought about this last year a little bit in that, you know, and we say this all the time because it's true, is like we don't have all the time in the world to hunt. And so when we do this, it has to be very efficient. And there's a benefit and a disadvantage to it. But we said, man, how cool would it be to do a Dakota double?
Yeah.
Right. And basically, could we go to North and South Dakota in the same trip? Because it's freaking 24 hours basically to drive there.
Well, and we're still figuring out the tag situation. It's like we didn't know. We were surprised when we drew North Dakota. We're like, I thought it was going to be 4 to 6 years. So when we found that out, we're like, well, what are these other states like? Like, what's the deal here? So
and most of them are, right? Most Western states, there are some over-the-counter type opportunities that seem like, but there are
we're
a lot
starting
of
to figure them out. The problem is like a lot of these sites just aren't the websites aren't very informed.
Yeah, they're rough.
Like, dude, South Dakota, unless you literally called and even if you do call and talk to somebody, it's pretty difficult to figure out that you can buy an over-the-counter statewide deer tag for South Dakota.
For archery.
For archery.
Yeah. Guns
as a non-resident.
Gun's a whole different ballgame. You got to draw. Yeah. It's always limited. And
there's different areas, I think, that have draws, like the Black Hills might.
So what we learned, and this is a recent change for those guys, because they're trying to, and I get it, right? They're trying to figure out how to throttle non-resident hunting, especially for mule deer in these states. So, yes, drew North Dakota, done deal, we're going. South Dakota, different. If you want to hunt public land as a non-resident, you can get that tag over the counter, but you can't start until October 1.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, October and that's a recent change. I think within the last maybe 2 years they changed that. But if you have private land access as a non-resident, you can hunt starting September 1. So that begged the question of like, well, cool. And not that we're not outfitter types, but like, just wasn't what we were looking for. So could we potentially lease ground in South Dakota, be able to hunt there? Just so happens it opens on the 1st of September, and North Dakota doesn't open until the 3rd of September.
Which is kind of weird. What is that, like a Wednesday and a
Friday?
Friday.
Yeah, I think always North Dakota is the first Friday of September. Yeah. Always South Dakota is the 1st of September. That's just the way it works out. So now it's like, okay, cool. We could go to South Dakota, hunt first few days, still be there in the first couple days of the open for North Dakota, called the Dakota Double.
Yeah, we'll just extend it a couple of days. It's not like we need a full week for each hunt. They're 2 hours apart, the leases from where we hunt public in North Dakota.
Yep.
So I think tentatively the plan is, instead of driving up through Fargo, picking up a trailer, pulling her across the state, which was kind of a hassle.
Yeah.
But was one, you know, in hindsight, maybe we could have done that in Bismarck or something. Like, could have got a little closer.
Yeah, potentially. Hassle. Plus, we had the smaller of the 3 trucks that we usually use.
Yeah.
So we had the Ranger, though good on gas mileage, not so much on pulling.
We dropped down to like 4 to 6 miles.
And we got to fuel up.
So I think now we're talking about driving clear across the state of South Dakota to the foothill, Piedmont, basically.
Yep, Black Hills area.
Black Hills, and picking up a camper there and heading north into Mule Deer country.
Yep, and then that puts us a couple hours from our North Dakota spot.
Yeah. So because this lease is unknown as far as what are we going to find there, it's also not as much land, obviously, as the public we have access to in North Dakota.
1,200 acres is what we're looking at, which sounds like a lot, but
is it? It's 1,200.
Yep, in this area, it's not.
And it goes for pretty cheap because land is so
it's just a big cattle country,
big cattle ground, as opposed to out here. So the plan, or at least like the fallback, like plan B here, is like, man, if we get into South Dakota and it just isn't what we're hoping to find, it's like we're not tied to that spot. We can go in just for a day or two and say, hey, we're just not seeing what we're seeing. Let's head north, and we know what we're going to find.
The only thing that does suck about the South Dakota thing is our lease is surrounded by a lot of public, of which residents will be hunting on the first. We can't. So literally, we could see mule deer on public. We just can't get to them, you know, and we have to head north.
That's no different than just like an opening day somewhere else.
No different than in North Dakota, looking across the line and seeing all the muleys on private.
If residents are hunting there, that means there's big bucks there.
Sure. Yeah. And there should be. I mean, here's the one thing that I've, and this has all happened within the last week. And so part of this is our guest stays, Marshal Johnson.
Yeah. Regional director of Mule Deer Foundation. We'll find out what his region is, but it's for sure
I think
North Dakota.
it is the Dakota.
Might be both the Dakotas. Might be more than that.
Maybe Minnesota, I think, as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so regional director for the Dakotas. Marshall's actually who turned us on to where to hunt in North Dakota when we got drawn. And since then, we've kind of kept in touch with Marshall, had a bunch of conversations. We met him for lunch.
Marshall. Yeah, on the way home.
Yeah, had lunch with him, just kind of had a good.
It was cool. I could tell he
talking.
really went out of his way to make time to see us, and he wanted to see the deer that we'd killed last year. And
well, and it's
Marshall's been good for us.
Part of what we're finding out here is like, listen, this is all unfamiliar territory for us. Like, you literally have to start doing some research, right? Call some people, do some research, look at the Mule Deer Foundation, so this is what I did for South Dakota is I went into the state site and they have harvest statistics on there. Looked at the harvest statistics, obviously for mule deer, western South Dakota. For most mule deer bucks with a bow, northwest South Dakota, which is where this lease is.
Yeah.
So
Harding County is that's when I asked Marshall, I was like, what do you think of this area? And I sent him like the actual coordinates and stuff. He's like, well, I mean, it's Harding County, so yeah, you're good.
It seems like, and again, that's a little different than North Dakota, of which there's a lot of that state, at least the western part of that state, that is mule deer country. In fact, there's a lot of elk country even north of where we were hunting.
Yeah.
Whereas
really in North Dakota.
That's right. Yeah, remember those guys were hunting out. But where like in the South Dakota, like the further south and east I went, looking at the harvest statistics, there were some mule deer being killed, but it was mainly whitetail. And obviously eastern South Dakota, all whitetail.
You know who I was talking to the other day was Fabio. And he's like, dude, the Dakotas are pretty underrated for whitetail. He's like,
I know
he goes out there a lot and see, they're hunting booners.
That's what I told you. I mean, with both of these tags, we can kill any deer, meaning whitetail or mule deer. Obviously, we're going for mule deer.
Well, we saw a giant whitetail.
Oh, that deer was
several.
Booner,
several.
For sure.
Some big barrel chested, not crazy high scoring, but big mature bucks.
The one we saw way out of our normal realm.
Yeah,
that was a booner.
Giant.
Just had, and it was so weird, like.
It was bizarre.
Bleach white.
Like
looked like a pen deer.
Yeah.
Because it was a non-typical too.
I remember that.
And
we didn't see anything else that.
He had a big velvet buck behind him too. But not nearly like that one. And listen, I mean, here's the difference that we quickly found, and we kind of know it as whitetail guys. Like spot and stock whitetail, that's tough.
Yeah, good freaking luck.
Yeah, I mean, these things are bolting ditches, whereas those muleys will hold tight and they'll bounce a little bit and find the next shade.
Yeah, the muleys are
different beasts.
They're a different animal.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, as we're looking at this, it makes sense. If we're going to pull a Dakota double, this is kind of where we have to go. This is kind of where we have to be. What up, dude?
I keep thinking he's going to bring a bow in for us one of these days.
It's Brian from the podcast. Like he's all right. He's a regular.
That beard is getting serious, man.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah. Later, dude.
Brian, our UPS guy, frequent visits here.
I keep thinking he's going to set 3 or 4 Hoyt bows right there.
It's gonna come at some point. He will be the one who delivers them, so we'll make sure he makes an appearance on that if corporate allows him.
If corporate, yeah,
he's kind of a big deal. But yeah, I mean, so listen, we got to do our own research. We feel very confident about North Dakota. Last year, we just knew it. We know what to expect. We know what to do.
It almost, in hindsight, felt like you were driving into like a preserve. Like, obviously, there's no fences in this place, but it's like all of a sudden you're in this mountain range and there's mule deer everywhere.
Well, and you think about like the day before, we spent a lot of time to the east of the river, of which we saw some mule deer. We saw a ton of whitetail, saw a ton of pronghorn.
Pronghorn, yep.
But like it was like, okay, like we're gonna have to work for it. And I'm not saying that we
like
didn't.
Ag country. There was a lot of like.
Well, that was the whitetail in us drawing us to the food. What seemed like the food. Then all of a sudden you go on the Badlands side with alfalfa in the bottoms. It's like, oh no, this is mule deer country.
Which I think makes sense because, I mean, we've only hunted mule deer for 3 days out of our entire life, right?
Yes.
And we were fortunate enough to kill out of those 3 days, but it seems like those mule deer are really looking for structure. And probably has something to do with shade.
Hot shade, yeah.
And also using that to their advantage as far as, I mean, obviously that one mule deer that I put a stock on, like they use that terrain. Like your comment was, you're like, yeah, he just mule deered right up and over that thing. It was a cliff that took me. This cliff took me 25 minutes to climb up over, like in a matter of 25 seconds. He's gone. Up and gone.
Yeah, I mean, the one I shot literally looked like it was back up underneath us because of the way. So it's just, we're a lot more familiar with the terrain. And again, we're looking at maps. Here it is coming in blind with this lease, just like our whitetail lease.
Dude, how excited are you that we're freaking going back to the Dakotas?
Oh, it's going to be fun.
I'm so excited.
It's going to be fun. I can't believe we drew North Dakota again.
I know.
And yes, we have to do a little bit more work to get to hunt South Dakota just because of the tag system and private land over public. I wish we could hunt public. It's just not in the cards. And once October kicks in, we're whitetail hunting. So it's out of this. But we're going to have a chance at a Dakota double here.
I'm amped.
And like you said, I mean, ultimately, if we walk into South Dakota, besides like buying a lease and not using it, if we go into South Dakota and we hunt a day or two and we don't get on mule deer, we're not seeing it, screw it, we go to North Dakota.
Do you know, I'll probably burst our own bubble on this Dakota double. If we're planning on calling like a feature film or anything, that what are they called? The Breaking Point guys beat us to it.
They have a Dakota double?
It's called Dakota double. Yep, and I think they double up in South Dakota, but I know for a fact those guys are hunting the Dakotas quite a bit. Yeah. Whitetails in eastern, northern.
I think they're Minnesota or Wisconsin guys, so they're close. Closer.
So that's fine. They can have it.
Yeah, we'll just call it Dakota
They did a good job
double.
with it. Yeah, they shot some nice mule deer out there and stuff. So
yeah, Dakota.
Because I've been looking, I've been like South Dakota mule deer. And those guys have an episode that.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the interesting. And I want to get Marshall's take on this. Is like when we start to talk about size, like we saw giant mule deer in North Dakota. I did a lot of research and looking where I immediately went was the outfitters who hunt South Dakota, right? Because those guys are showing quality deer.
DHL outfitters, they're just northwest of us.
Yeah, and they had some great bucks on there. So I mean, there's definitely big muleys there.
Yeah.
But it just seems weird. Like not many people are talking about it in that state. They're just not talking about mule deer.
This is all very fresh. I know we got a lot of things to figure out here. I'm pretty optimistic that my cousin in Ekalaka can help us out. I know we have to commit to the lease
soon.
He can't help us out that fast, but I'll bet he'd head down there in the summer for us and help us scout him up.
If there is the one thing that we found that was super critical in North Dakota, although we found bucks in other places, is they are definitely at that time of year still doing food bed. And so whether it's alfalfa and or wheat, those were the two primary ag sources that we found in North Dakota. And if you found those and then adjacent bluffs, you found mule deer.
I'd like to pick Marshall's brain about their preference in food sources. We've been doing a lot of talking about this with whitetails, obviously, and food plots. Mule deer food habits is not something we know as much about.
I mean, they're definitely eating sage. We know that.
At least in North Dakota where we were at.
Yeah. So, yeah, exciting times, man. This is probably a good time to talk about it before we get Marshall on here, is that, one of the things that we're going to try to, again, we're more than just a podcast, right? Maybe people don't see that yet, but
a human being.
We are human beings. We have feelings and emotions that are real, and people can hurt them, which thanks for everybody being so far cordial in their comments on the YouTube video.
It's been really cool to see.
Yeah, we appreciate that. I mean, we try to respond to everybody in a way that, is respectful to caring about you taking the time to watch the video. And, provide comment, whether it's Bill, Jeff, Strickland, whoever it is. But, we've got a bunch of kind of short throwback type content from 2020 and even beyond that we're going to bring out here soon.
Today we'll probably watch at least one or like some of
couple
our
of the recovery videos
just as a refresher. Yeah.
And then we've got we're going to be doing semi live type stuff throughout the season, right? And this will be really the big start of it is this Dakota trip.
Yeah.
But really the feature of what we're doing is feature films that will come out in 2022. So we're going to be filming them this fall.
Yeah.
People will see those in 2022. We expect them to be, 45 minutes to an hour type feature films of the Dakotas is one, Kansas, hopefully, if we get drawn, is another, and then kind of just a combination of all the other deer hunts, maybe on a time basis.
At-home stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Kentucky. So I think that'll be really cool to have out here is that's the next phase of Hunter Podcast will continue. It'll always be a big core of what we do, but like these are the other things that you're going to start to see on the YouTube channels and stuff come out.
I think they'll be a really nice compliment to the podcast and to just the way that we hunt, the way that we film and everything like that. It's like, we don't live in Iowa or, one of these states where it's like every day we're going out and chasing after the same buck. We do have access to some great pieces and that's awesome.
We don't have time.
But it just makes more sense for us to really try to make the most out of some of these bigger trips that we do get to do every year. North Dakota being one, like you said, Kansas being another, and then some of the at-home stuff. So, instead of trying to produce, 8 or 10, 22-minute episodes, why not really focus on turning out a quality production out of these super dense trips that we do, that we have planned.
And I think that we'll give these kind of semi-live updates from these trips, whether they're 2 minutes or 7 minutes, depending on what the content looks like. You'll see exactly what's happening through the fall. It'll just be more of
it'll certainly give some context to our podcast. So if you listen, and you're like, man, I really am wondering what this North Dakota thing looks like, or what this Kansas trip, what that looks like. You'll get to see all of that. I guess shout out to the Gritty podcast, or Brian Call is the guy that runs that, had a really successful podcast for a long time. I think he's still doing it.
Yeah, still doing it.
And they've done some films. I think they call them the Gritty films. And like, I just think it's a really nice compliment.
Yeah,
like,
it's a cool way to put that journey.
Yeah, we're not
together.
trying just to be like a hunting show. We just want to provide some complimentary, like storyline via video footage to what we're talking about on a daily basis. And so I think it'd be cool for people to see.
I agree. Let's bring Marshall in. Let's start talking about some Dakota mule deer. There he is. You hear us?
I can hear you.
What's up, man?
Hey, Marshall.
Oh, just hanging out, working on some financials for my Minnesota event.
Oh, there you go. Well, that was kind of the first question we had is, obviously we knew Dakotas and I thought Minnesota, but are those the states that you are really covering?
Well, I actually kind of cover everything east of the Missouri River pretty much. My primary area is North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Minnesota. And I actually started a chapter in Pennsylvania. And that one is up there by Mountaintop.
Yeah.
And then I'm working with a gentleman right now in northern New York. There's another guy in just outside of Cincinnati. He actually wants to host it in Kentucky.
Cool.
Another guy in Indiana. And I've had conversations with a few people in Wisconsin and Michigan as well.
There you go, man. That's awesome. Yeah.
We're thinking of actually coming out there to Pennsylvania. Our director of conservation is based in Montana, but he's originally from outside the Pittsburgh area. And
no kidding.
We want to come out there possibly later this summer. And we're trying to hope to hit the hatch earlier this year with the cicada and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, we're probably looking at something latter part of the summer. We're thinking about coming out your direction there and maybe hosting 2 or 3 Gunapaloozas, and including one over in DC.
Very cool, man.
Wow.
Well, I would assume, obviously last year, and we talked with you about it, last year was the first year Jared and I really headed out that way to hunt mule deer and stuff. But it seems like the natural evolution for a lot of the whitetail hunters in the eastern U.S. is to start to migrate that way for mule deer. So I assume you've got some pretty significant crowds out this way that would be interested in what you guys are doing at the Mule Deer Foundation.
And that's what it usually takes. You go out there to Brainerd, for example, Brainerd, Minnesota. you know, you maybe have, you know, 10% of the people that show up to your event have hunted out west or love to hunt out west, whether it's mule deer, elk, or antelope or whatever. And they're just excited about, you know, helping out with our organization and helping out with mule deer. And let's just be honest, when you go to a banquet or any kind of event like that where there's guns, you know, the vast majority of the people there don't really care where the money's going. They're happy it's going to a nonprofit, but they just want to win a gun.
They want to win. Yeah, that's what they're there for. Yeah. No,
and so it's kind of a win-win situation.
Well, and obviously, and we'll get into this a little bit more detail, but like, you know, the mule deer thing is a lot different than what most of those guys are used to, which is, hey, I go buy my over-the-counter whitetail tag and, you know, I'm hunting, you know, basically. And for a lot of these areas and opportunities as you get western, including the Dakotas, or at least North Dakota specifically, you know, it's draw-based. It's non-resident draw-based and stuff. And so there's a little bit more planning and thought process behind it to be able to do that stuff.
I think some of that has been, or the way has been paved by, you know, some of these guys I was talking about, like the Breaking Point, some of the Heartland Bow Hunter guys, some of the productions that a lot of us Eastern guys are like tuning into. Some of these guys are starting to branch out into, and they'll do, because they're trying to extend their season is what they're trying to do. And that's what we tried to do as well. It's like, man, if we can go at the end of August, like early September, and do a deer hunt, you know, of some sort, why not? How do we figure that out? And I think that was kind of our thought process and starting to figure out, you know, and then we met a guy from North Dakota who was like, oh, dude, like, you know, you should come out and check it out for sure. So we started doing the research, and that's when I got in touch with you and said, or just used you as a resource basically to say, hey, where should we go? And
well, I was trying to figure out why that you don't.
Well, first of all, you never. First of all,
coming out to North Dakota.
First of all, you would never text me back. I was texting you for like months. Finally, this guy texted me back. It's like, this isn't Marshall. You keep texting me. I'm going to report you. I was like, oh, that's
sorry.
You know, it would
have been a 406 number, my old one.
Maybe. So this guy was pissed off that I was texting.
By the way, do you know where any mule deer are in North Dakota?
Okay, I understand you're mad, but before you report
I have
me,
you on the phone.
Yeah, that's funny, dude. But yeah, that was the big thing, I think, you know, for us, and we're obviously not afraid to roll up the sleeves and get at it, but I mean, you got to do some research around this stuff. And the one thing that, and we kind of hit on this in the opener, and no offense to them, it's obviously a technology priority, but you know, a lot of the state resources are tough to navigate, especially for a non-resident. Like coming in blind to like what the regulations are and how
North
the
Dakota's
licenses are.
Fine. North Dakota isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Have you tried to use South Dakota's licensing website?
I have not. No.
It's rough.
Pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Well,
North Dakota is pretty easy.
Yeah, North Dakota.
I went to college.
Yeah.
You know, for all 4 years, and
I run a tech company.
Yeah, I had to get somebody on the phone to like walk me through it.
Well, it's just what's so weird about it. Again, yeah, North Dakota. The only thing that wasn't very clear about North Dakota, and I think it was when we put in last year, was like, I don't know what the odds of getting draw are.
Yeah,
you know, like, is it something we should expect every year? Is it something that it's like every 4 or 5? Like, we just didn't know.
Well, what's weird about South Dakota's is like, and even though it is over the counter and it is statewide, the terminology still says like apply. And so even after the checkout process, you're, you know, a normal guy would be under the impression that like you are putting in for a draw when you're guaranteed. It's over the counter. I even talked to somebody at the state office. They're like, yeah, as soon, and I had her on like I don't know if it's a screen share, but she was looking at the same thing I was talking. And I was like, cool. So as soon as I check out with this, it's $311, $25 for a habitat stamp and, you know, your mule deer statewide tag. She's like, yeah, as soon as the order's placed, you know, a day or two later, it'll get mailed out.
And that's private land. Because the application period for public land hunting,
and it does say it specifies private land.
So yeah, you know, but I think that's where something like the Mule Deer Foundation, Marshall, and what you guys are doing makes it so critical, because there's a source of information from your state level page to obviously the national chapter, you know, website and stuff, that there's a lot of information to be able to find out there that I don't think normally we would have tripped on, or it would have taken a long time to decipher what was happening there.
Right. So that's one of the things we like to be is to be a resource as well. Oftentimes what it is we don't have the capacity to carry all that information, but we can direct you where you can find that information, as well as answer those questions. And you'll also find that a lot of our volunteer state chairs, chapter chairs, and stuff like that are are also very open and willing to share their information and answer questions for folks too.
Yeah. And for us, I mean, it's not like we don't need the, hey, send me this GPS coordinate. It's just like, just point us in the right direction. Like, cause we're coming in blind. In fact, we were talking about where we were hunting in North Dakota last year. And when we first started, our kind of whitetail draw was to head east of the river, which was more, still had some kind of Badland-esque stuff, but it was more ag-based and ravines and things. And we saw a ton of deer, mainly whitetail, though we saw some mule deer, a lot of pronghorn. But it was like, okay, like we can work with this. And then it just was a matter of exploring and saying, hey, let's go west of the river. It looks a little bit more terrain-based over there. And it's like, oh, this is where the mule deer are.
Yeah.
Right. That's where you're going to find the mule deer.
Yeah.
They're going to be in the breaks and the rough stuff, scrubby stuff and everything like that. Here in the plains, the whitetails, they hang out in the agricultural areas, in the river riparian areas and so forth. And the muleys, you'll see muleys come down to the alfalfa fields or something like that. After they're done eating, they go right back up into the breaks and stuff. So
well, that's what we saw in North Dakota was like, even though it was, most of the sightings were more tied to the Badlands and the breaks areas. It was very locally sourced to some big agricultural food sources.
Yeah, those alfalfa bottoms.
Once you got too far away from them, we kind of got out of the mule deer. But
we did see some every once in a while in some of the high country area, like up in the pines up on the top. We saw a couple.
I know
big
the one
ones.
you're thinking of. Yeah,
we saw a big one up there, and he was way up there.
I'm telling
too.
you, he bedded right there.
I know.
It was on private. We thought about putting
right on
stock
the line.
It was right on the line.
Yeah, and you'll have that, but I mean, you start to get into those. The other one that we found was really solid out there was some of these wheat fields. It tended to be a big draw for these deer in and out of these wheat fields. And it's so funny because, again, this is us coming in as whitetail guys. I put the first stock on 2 pretty nice mule deer, and like I'm literally 60 yards from these deer, and I was like, yeah, they're gone. Like I'm looking at the ditch, they're not here, and they're literally huddled together under this single big sage bush. Where the only shade that was left in the draw was, and it was such an eye-opening thing for me to be like, oh, wow, like that's how this is going to be.
Don't you think in hindsight, knowing what we know about that, don't you think we could have killed those deer?
Oh, I should have killed those deer. Had I gone out around a little further, I was out more than I thought I needed to be. But again, knowing that I'm looking at the shade of the terrain more than I am the shade of literally a bush.
This was literally the first day at noon, because that's when you can start hunting. First stock like ever.
Yeah.
So I'm watching like from the distance. These deer are only like 150 yards off the road. So I'm watching from one side of the road, and Jeremy's putting up. So first stock, like we're just super excited, and
raw.
He thought he got
raw at this.
Man, we learned a lot in just 2 or 3 days, and I'm sure we'll continue to learn.
Yeah, we ended up putting 2 or 3 stalks on those same deer because you stalked, I think, later that evening on them.
Yeah, well, we lost them that day.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe that evening we went back out to drive around, just for glassing.
Yep, spotted them.
Yeah, we spotted them coming back in from where we bumped them from originally, and so I jumped out of the truck. It was kind of a weird deal because, like, some guys might call it road hunting, but it's like we're in mule deer country and the deer are just walking right across the road, and we're middle of nowhere pretty much. So we hopped out and I just ran up over this coulee and I had a pretty close encounter.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that we found is that although we ended up spending a lot of time in one general area, I mean, we put some miles on the truck and on the boots, just driving to certain places, hiking out and scouting. And like, we had kind of one, call it method, I guess, of how we were scouting those areas and getting on. Once we found deer, like we would commit to them, where like the guys who were residents who were in this little camping area with us, they very much seemed like they were like, hey, I'm going to park here and I'm just going to hike for miles and hope that I come across the deer.
They had like their own little secluded, they're like, this is my drainage. Like I like to walk this drainage.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, hey, this is my group of bucks that I'm trying to get.
And he missed a big one.
Missed a 160 type.
Yeah. And so it was just, it's just weird kind of how everybody has their own little style on that. But, the fact is,
I bet we'll bump into those guys again.
We probably will.
I bet they'll be there.
It's so different than, what I imagine and or what I hear from like Utah, Wyoming, even Colorado, to a point where these guys are just packing in high country, spending a week in the high country, just hiking around. We came back to our camp every day at this little camping area. We were easily getting up to the mule deer country and hunting big deer and seeing big deer. And so it's just a different style. So, I feel like, and you probably have a lot of experience with this from a Mule Deer Foundation side, especially for the states you're covering, is that, we're Eastern guys, we're whitetail guys, right? So it definitely felt like it catered a little bit more towards our style of hunting than like if we were packing up into the high country for a week raw at it.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to do that in North Dakota or South Dakota. I mean, you get to Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, you got the mountains and everything, and you got some expansive territory, and trust me, you don't want to be hiking up and down those mountains to go to a campsite,
right.
10 miles away. And so you just hike your gear up there. I lived out in Montana for 14 years, and I did a couple hunts up in the mountains, and, growing up in North Dakota and hunting the western part of the state, I knew how to hunt there. I gravitated toward that when I got out to Montana. After a couple of years, you're all excited about the mountains. Then you realize the equipment that you all need.
Right.
And, it's a tougher hunt.
Do I want to kill a 160 up there, or do I want to kill a 160 right over there?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, then I also knew how the mule deer reacted and how they moved, in the western part of North Dakota, which is similar to eastern Montana, where it's very much similar type of terrain and everything. And
is that the part of Montana that you lived in? Was the eastern?
Well, I lived in Billings, and I did most of my hunting in eastern Montana.
Okay.
I did my elk hunting, including some of my elk hunting in eastern Montana too.
Uh-huh.
But I also did some deer and elk hunting up there by Lincoln.
I've got some family, Marshall, in Ekalaka, Montana. Do you know what that's at? Yeah.
That's some really good antelope country and mule deer country there.
Yeah.
And that Harding County, what you're talking about, you're not too far from there.
I know.
That's what we were saying.
I'm actually trying to figure out if I can use, the cousin's name is Jonathan. I'm going to see if I can get him to run over in the summer and kind of help us scout out the South Dakota piece. He can't be more than an hour from either one of these spots that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah. I've driven up that highway there coming across and over to Ekalaka. Then I went up north because my last antelope hunt in Montana was up there by Baker.
Okay.
And I drove up that route, and I was just, wow. I mean, beautiful area, a lot of ponderosas and everything. You don't think about that.
Yeah.
And it's just gorgeous. So you get south of the interstate, I-94 in Montana and North Dakota, you start getting into those ponderosas. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. I wondered, again, kind of like we did with North Dakota, we did a lot of research on that side, and obviously, it seems like there's mule deer in a lot of those areas in the western part of North Dakota, but I mean, there's definitely some core areas that I think people hunt or, gravitate to a lot. In South Dakota, like when I was looking at the harvest maps, it really does seem like that northwest corner in Harding County is like, that's the place to be. Are we accurate on that, Marshall?
Yeah, that's the hot spot for South Dakota. North Dakota, it's right around the Teddy Roosevelt National Park. Everybody wants to hunt around there.
Yeah.
In South Dakota, it's Harding County, northwest corner over there.
What do you think, Marshall? I sent you the exact coordinates, and based on your text back to me, I think that you at least glanced at it. We're kind of unsure. Like, it's definitely not Badlands. Like, it looks just more like rolling hills, and so like we know what we're getting into in North Dakota. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. In fact, we've only put a deposit on this lease. It's not like it's locked or we haven't paid the full amount. We're still trying to figure out, like, man, is there mule deer on this thing? Like, is it?
There'll be mule deer on it. You're also going to have good antelope there too. So everything where you guys went camping, where you camped, if you went to the south, you saw how it was more, hay fields and, more rolly. That's what you're going to have down there too. But now you're going to have cutouts here and there. Especially you got some really good water going through that area.
Yep.
Got some good creek beds and stuff like that. So you're going to have some nice cutouts, places, where you're talking about where a mule deer is going to lay down in the shade.
Right.
So you got a lot of that. You got adequate water. I couldn't see any fields or anything like that. So I'm thinking
there was one in the northeastern corner or something like that. There, from what I can tell, it's the only ag field for miles.
Yeah, it looks
like a wheat field.
It looks like wheat. It definitely isn't alfalfa.
No.
It looks like it is some sort of hay base field. There were round bells in it and stuff. I'm thinking it's wheat, but I'm not positive.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that, yeah, we were looking at that too, thinking, you know, obviously if they're browsing on sage and stuff and moving through there and in, you know, these creek ditches and stuff, there's probably a ton of forbs and stuff for them to eat. But
the one for sure negative is like, we've obviously heard a lot of guys talking about where cows are at, you know, the mule deer are not as frequently just because they're eating, you know, all the habitat that the mule deer.
Yeah, they're not going to hang around with the herd or anything like that. They'll skirt around it and stuff, but mule deer aren't going to move away. I mean, they're going to be there. They just won't be hanging with the cows.
Yeah. And I mean, it's
cows herd up. They don't spread out very much.
Well, and it's 1,200 acres too. So, I mean, it's a big chunk of ground.
I will say this, Marshall, I'd take your opinion on this too. So I talked to a guy at the camper rental place. So like as soon as Jeremy like, hey, I think we're going to lease this, I start calling camper places, making plans and stuff. And the guy's like, oh, you're heading up there. He's like, yeah. He's like, I shot a nice mule deer up there. He's like, you're in the right area. He's like, in fact, he's like, if you like ask around, he's like, most of those ranchers own so much land that if you ask them, like, they're going to say, yeah.
Interesting.
Not so much.
That's questionable.
Yeah.
Well, no,
nowadays that's very, very questionable.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're leasing.
Maybe
I mean, we have down there in that southwestern corner of North Dakota, we have a lot of plots land down there, and plots land is private land open to sportsmen. It's a state initiative or a state program where they work with landowners and actually pay a lease to the landowner annually to allow that land open 24/7 all year long. For sportsmen and stuff. And what's really nice about down there in that southwestern part of the state is that there's a lot of national grasslands. And, you know, that's Forest Service. And so it's interspersed with that. And then just on that side where you guys were, just through 2 or 3 property owners, we've probably got about 27 to 30,000 acres of plots land that we help.
And that's what we hunted. We did have some of the natural grasslands that I think I killed mine on plots. Yours was actually on natural grasslands.
That was going to be kind of my tagline question. Does something like that exist in South Dakota, and would that be eligible for this private land only?
It's not.
Piece? No?
It does.
Well, they have a program that they're trying to get out there and institute. They've been using a little bit. It's called CHAPS. And it's based fairly similar to like the Montana's program. With block management. And it's kind of a crossbreed between plots and that. So they're still working on that. They do have some of these people lined up in CHAPS. There's an effort right now in South Dakota. I know I was in a conference call with the Game and Fish Department and with BLM in South Dakota, specifically talking about the western side over there of what we can do to improve the relationships with the landowners to open access to public land. So, for instance, in South Dakota, if there's not a county road or an easement to public land, you cannot get on it. You can't cross somebody's land. Whereas in North Dakota, if there is a section line, you can drive to that public land, or you can walk to that public land.
Which we did, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we did that to get to where I killed mine.
Yeah, the 2-track.
Yeah, but in South Dakota, it's a lot harder in that regard. And so, you know, they contacted me and asked me to be on this conversation because of what, you know, North Dakota Game and Fish is doing with their plots program and how the Mule Deer Foundation partners with them on establishing these plots. And so that's where we are right now. We're in that discussion period about what can we do to enhance this CHAPS program? What can we do to make it a win situation for the landowner to open up access?
Yeah, I think that's huge because, I mean, I know when we started to look in the area, we were going to hunt North Dakota last year where we're going back this year. You know, there were some grassland areas that were open to the public, but the plots really is what sealed the deal for us because it's like, wow, look at all of this stuff that's under the plots program that we can go and hunt that if had not been in that program for your efforts and the state's efforts, like, it would have been very fragmented. It would have been very tough. You would have seen a lot of deer, but trying to get to them would have been almost impossible. And then I looked at least where we're at in South Dakota. Obviously, the big thing for us is that, you know, we have to be on private land as non-residents or we can't start hunting until October. And that's like a new rule in the last couple of years, basically.
I'm a little, like uneasy about that aspect of it. Like,
just because we're going to be so confined.
Yeah, we're just tied to, because I know like when we drove out to North Dakota, we had this idea of like, okay, this ground looks really good, and it was more than 1,200 acres.
But we could drive.
Yeah, and when we got there, it's like, had that been all we had access to, like, yeah, we could have had a good hunt and made it, but the deer were over here.
Yeah.
And I'm a little worried that if we get out to South Dakota and we're tied to this 1,200 acre piece, and it's just not what we had hoped, that like we would have wasted some money and some time. It's not like the end of the road, because we're still going.
We'll go to North Dakota. Yeah.
You know, but I hate to waste that time.
Well, my suggestion to you would be to go take a look at that property, hang out a few days to see what you got going on there.
That's 21 hours from us is the problem. Well, that's
I understand that. Well, you can fly; it's a lot quicker. Fly into Rapid City, rent a car, drive up there.
Yeah.
Well,
we talked about it with some of our buddies to potentially go look at it.
I don't think there's any way to save the money. Like if we decide, hey, I think it's a good piece, because we owe the deposit on the lease like within a week. So in 5 days we gotta pay for the lease. But I do think we can save ourselves some time by getting Jonathan to run down there and look at the ground for us. And
yeah, I mean the other thing that I noticed around there, again, so there's BLM land, can't hunt that until October. It's around there. There's another one that I saw that was it's public hunting, but it's a grazing association. That's the first time I've ever seen anything like that. Are you familiar with those at all?
Yeah. It's just typical, livestock association, grazing association, and it'll be, like we have two that we support right now, and it's just several landowners that have grouped their land together. They're adjacent to each other and stuff, and they call themselves the grazing association.
Okay. So it seems like, at least according to this stuff I was looking at, that it is open to public hunting as part of this association. Okay. Or at least this one is that I was looking at. So I don't know.
Are you talking South Dakota?
Yeah, South Dakota.
Oh, okay. I thought you might have been talking Horse Creek grazing over there.
No, it was Moreau Grazing Association.
Makes sense. The river goes through there, yeah.
Yep. So I don't know. It's open to public. And this is the state resource stuff. Yeah, it's like, is that open or no? Because it's public accessible, but it is privately owned. So those are the lines that we just have to get clarification on before we get out there. I mean, regardless, we're going to have 1,200 acres. That seems like a core spot for us to go and hunt.
Yeah.
In Hardin County, which if we're going to have a shot at it, that's the place we want to be.
I agree. I think it looks good. I mean, from my 3 days of mule deer hunting experience, I did think that it looked like there was some good terrain on that property that we're looking at here.
Some ditches,
it seems like there's
water,
a decent food source, like you said. Yeah, good water. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah,
it's just hard to know. It's half a country away.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about, though.
Just looking at the topography and everything, and knowing what I know of that area, there's mule deer there and there's antelope there. I mean,
so that's it.
Well,
is that is there a that's one thing we haven't even looked at, and we considered it. Antelope Tax. So I don't know how that works for non-residents in South Dakota. Is that something that's a draw-based or an over-the-counter? Do you know offhand?
I'm sure it's draw-based, and I'm not too sure if they hand them out to residents at all. That I couldn't answer for you.
Okay.
I know in North Dakota, I don't think there's a non-resident antelope at all.
Really?
I know Wyoming and Montana do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that was North Dakota and South Dakota. We got hammered pretty hard back around 2011 and 12 with those horrific storms, and they just decimated the herds.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, we didn't have an antelope season here until a couple of years ago.
Wow,
I mean, 6 years, at least 7 years before they even had one. And
wasn't that you that was telling us that that's one of your favorite things to hunt was pronghorn?
Oh, I like to hunt pronghorn. I had a lot of fun in Montana.
That was you. Yeah. When we were eating like fried mushroom
wings.
Caps or something.
We were eating wings, man.
You're like, I'll tell you what, those pronghorns that's one of my favorite. And it's funny. It's just like, turkey hunters or anything else. It's like trying to understand that. It's just a different kind of hunt.
It is. It's a completely different hunt. Very smart animals, and damn, they can see. Oh my gosh. They can see you coming. And once they know the hunt is on, they know your chances of success are really, really low.
Well, and that's what is so, again, foreign to us coming from the East is we actually, I think probably by the second or third day, we had other people come into camp who were residents who were all pronghorn hunters. And they're like, oh yeah, it's the pronghorn rut. Remember the couples and stuff that were in camp with us? They were all hunting the pronghorn.
We were like, whatever.
Yeah, and it was like, well, and we had seen a ton of pronghorn.
All I saw was them missing that the target.
Oh, they were zinging some. But yeah, we had seen a ton of like pronghorn, and we're like watching, these pronghorn basically garden and stuff, and it's like, oh wow, like it's the rut.
They don't seem smart. Like when you're just driving around, it's like beep beep, get out of the road, But then it sounds like when you start to hunt them, I can understand how they might be a little more savvy to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean during the rut, obviously the buck's always stupid.
Yes,
but the does.
Yes,
I mean
she's on alert.
Yeah, I mean it's harder than crap to sneak up on a herd when you got 20 does sitting in there, man. All those eyes looking around.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like.
I think the reason it never really excited me was I can't tell the difference between a trophy and a non-trophy.
Again, just we're
because I'm just inexperienced. Guys will be like, oh, look at these hooks, and I'm like,
being out there, and I always look for the ones that got that perfect heart shaped over the top of the head.
Yeah.
Then the big thing that they look for that. They look for the height, 16, 17 inches is optimum. But then the other thing is everybody talks about cutters. They want those big, thick cutters.
Is that's like the
front? Yeah.
Yeah, they're up about 3 inches above, and they stick out, those little cutters.
Interesting.
And those are the things you look for. If you got a thick cutter on there, that could be a big buck there.
Yeah, because we're driving around, and I'm like, yeah, that looks like a big one.
You're like, yeah, that's a pronghorn.
Yeah, I'd shoot it.
Isn't it weird how there's different aspects to these trophies? Like I know even guys like I understand like the turkey one, the spurs and stuff, but it's still kind of weird. It's like this thing has like a inch a quarter spur. It's like
yeah, it's like you called that bird in, are you gonna pass him up?
Yeah. What do his spurs look like?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's 3-year-old bird. Decent spurs.
At least with pheasant, I love pheasant. That's one of my favorite things to hunt, because you can do it every day.
Yeah, just go.
Right part of the county country.
We got the tail feathers we can look at.
Right.
So then it's the tail feather, and then everybody goes right to the spurs too. Like, oh, let's take another.
It's so crazy.
I hunted pheasant with my cousin in North Dakota when I was young. I was probably like 12, and I didn't know what I was doing. And apparently, you can only shoot the roosters.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell the difference. Like it's a bird, it's flying, they make the noise. And I can remember one specifically. They flew up, I shot and missed, and then the guys were like, hen. They call it a hen, female. Yeah. They're like hen, and I was like, they're like hen, and I just missed it like 3 times and emptied my chamber on
like
it.
It's a hen.
I was like, what do you mean?
They're trained by 5 years old to yell rooster or hen.
Yeah, rooster. Yeah.
Rooster.
I didn't know any better.
I feel like all of our stock birds in the East, as soon as one goes up, everybody's yelling rooster, and I'm like, no, that's a hen.
Yeah,
But it is funny because again, and it's so cool. First of all, a big thanks to Marshall, because like you pointed us in the right direction. We had an unbelievable trip to the point where like all we talked about, even through the whitetail season, was like, man, do you think like we're gonna get drawn to go back? Because like we're gonna apply every year, right? Yeah. That's just a given. When we got the notification just a couple weeks ago, I was like, dude, we got drawn. Like, again, we're going back.
We got some. I was listing them off earlier, 2 full circle things. The third of which is that you just got your mount back.
I did.
You want to talk about that?
Not really. It was not a good thing.
There's no velvet on it. That's the problem.
So I shot. I shot.
It?
Yeah. So I shot my first velvet buck, had a little drop tine on it, almost 2 drop tines, which was awesome.
That's why you shot it. Velvet buck.
Velvet with a drop tine. Yeah. And we took pristine care of this thing. We did everything right. Like it was the velvet was done correctly. And so what I did is I sent it off to a guy who does, we won't mention his name just because I'm too angry about it, but does like the beetle side of it. Right, to clean the skull up and whiten it, and I've seen his work.
Pretty prominent guy, like he does a lot of stuff.
His beetles probably got to the velvet.
Well, and so he told me,
100%.
right? He asked me. He said, "Hey, when I sent it to him, he's like, hey, did you take care of this velvet?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, we've had it out for many days. Like it's fine, it's dry. Like it was on the verge of shedding anyways.
We used like a spray-on product for drying it out. Yeah,
got everything out, all the blood out. Like it was definitely perfect. He's like, yeah, I wrapped it. I did this, I did that. And like, they still got into it. And I'm like, how, man? Like, I literally asked you before I even sent it. I was
did
like,
say that?
Yeah. Yeah. He wrote me this huge text message, which I can't even like
recently
read without my head
like
exploding. Yesterday? Yes. When I got it, I called him out.
Oh.
I was like, dude, there's no velvet on this thing. And he's like, well, like when you put them into this colony and you do it, like, you know, sometimes nature just happens. And I'm like, what the hell, man?
Wow.
So like he sends me this.
I didn't realize you said anything to him about it.
Oh yeah, I called him out, and it's like he's like, yeah, you know, it's just I could read you the text. It literally is. It's such a.
I'd like to hear it.
You want to hear it?
I'd like to hear it.
And I mean, at the end of the day, I don't kill it because of the antlers. So like that doesn't bother me.
But as imagine, well, it was a trophy. I mean, it's your first, but imagine if you had sent him like a 220, like just a giant world-class mule deer, and that thing got all laid up.
So let's see. Some of this is also trying to put blame on me, which I like.
Okay.
It says, he said, yes, I had them all taped up with electric tape. Well, I don't know why. You said when you sent it that they were treated and I didn't have to worry about them for preservative work. That was correct. I went a step further, though, and completely electric taped them so that they, meaning the beetles, would stay off the antlers. But when you put a deer head into a colony, they can go through a skull in a matter of days to 2 days. It doesn't take them long to get through anything. The only way to have prevented this was to actually cut off the antlers and then take them to the local taxidermist to dry freeze them and then put them back on.
No, incorrect.
When we initially talked, you said you had them treated. You weren't worried about the bugs eating the velvet off. He's basically telling me that if
we
they
didn't
were
treat them for beetles.
Well, that's what he's saying. He's basically telling me
velvet.
if I treated the velvet, the beetles wouldn't have ate the velvet, which I call bullshit on.
Yeah, incorrect.
And that's basically
obviously
he basically said
it's clean. I mean, it's clean.
He said take it to a local taxidermist and have them flock them for you.
What does that mean?
Put velvet back on.
Fake velvet. Have you seen that? It looks not good.
Look, what do you mean? And here's the other thing. First of all, had he done this appropriately, we wouldn't have been in this issue. I sent those to him the week we got back from harvesting that in September, and I just got that head back last week.
I think you got to make a post at some point, dude. Like, just to save somebody else from sending a velvet trophy. Like, don't send that guy a velvet trophy. It'll get eaten.
Yeah, like, and I asked him, I was like, dude, do you do these? Like, before I even sent them, because obviously we've done them. I just did Carter's this year. Like, I would have did it myself.
Yeah.
And just been like, cool, I'll just do it myself. Like, it's a pain in the ass, but I'll do it myself. Instead, I send it to you because this is what you do as a business. Cool, I'll send my trophy off to you. It comes back, not even done. It's not degreased. It's not whitened. There's like a chunk of velvet hanging.
Is that still like his job?
I hope not.
Yeah.
Because that, and again, it's been 8 months.
Yeah.
People are getting
that's why he started getting anonymous.
Back.
Yeah, we've got all kind of guys getting full shoulder mounts back.
Well, I thought
and it's like, hey, we sent this to you like in September for a European mount.
I thought he lost it. That was my thing. I was like, okay, you lost it, dude. Like, I'm pissed, but just tell me you lost it. Oh, no, you didn't lose it. It ate the velvet off a long time ago, too. Because, dude, this thing is like, it's dry as a bone. A long time ago, and you just didn't want to tell me. That's not how you do business.
Hate to see that.
So, anyways, I've got this thing, and
sorry about that for you, man.
And I hate it because like I have it. I'll finish it off, right? I'll whiten the skull, do all that stuff myself. But now I've got this thing, and like it's disrespectful to the animal to be like pissed off about it. To be like, oh, I don't want to show this now as a trophy.
Yeah, because
it still is. Like, it still is important to me.
Well, but the memory is like tarnished because I shot the thing in velvet. Like, that's how I wanted to preserve it.
Yes,
and you're just preserving it not in the way that you'd intended.
Yes. Doesn't look nearly as cool.
Bummer.
As did you essentially lose yours.
As did I. That was my fault.
Because the freezer.
That was my fault. I don't know if we told you, Marshall, I was planning on shoulder mounting my buck.
Yeah.
And we bought a new house in October. So like right after we got back from our hunt. And I put the cape into the freezer that was in the basement. And it was on I don't know what you call those, but it had a trip.
Yeah,
switcher. A break. Well,
the GF, it's a
GFI.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. And it switched off, and that cape went bad.
Oh.
Rotted in the freezer. So ended up working out. Working out. I actually cut the antlers off.
A Euro.
Well, I don't because you can't
skull capped it.
Yeah, we had to skull cap it because you can't bring no brain matter.
Oh no! Oh, that's right.
So I had a skull cap. It was clean. This is what we do in Kansas too. I had a skull cap and I had a cape. And so I ended up cutting the antlers off of the cap, and we use rack hub is what it's called. Rack hub. They make they make a dual,
like a plaque.
Yeah, it's a really clean like piece of steel with two like mounts on it basically. So in my office at home, I've just got two antlers mounted.
You have to send me a picture of that.
It looks good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing is like...
Yeah, so we were like pretty unsuccessful with our preservation of mule deer.
That's why we're going back.
We're coming back. We got a new standard too. We're going to try to raise the bar. We're looking for some
bigger ones.
150 type deals, which was the goal last time. But
what did you guys think of the venison?
Oh, dude, I love it. I thought it was way better than my whitetails.
Really?
I at least, because I eat venison 3 nights a week probably.
Wow.
And when I eat mule deer, I thought it tasted way better than whitetail. Less gamey. And again, those deer had been sitting there eating wheat and alfalfa.
I haven't eaten a ton of it. Well, I did eat some, and I did notice a big difference between it and whitetail.
I thought there was, at least from my point
Well, we
of view.
cooked some right there in camp, right?
Oh, we cooked the inner tenderloins right there in camp on the fire that night.
Yeah. They were very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've almost I have a little bit left, not much, but yeah, I think I could tell a difference. Do people tell you that they can tell a difference?
Oh yeah, out here they a lot of people, especially whitetail hunters, they scoff at mule deer and that's just gamey and blah blah blah. And it's a little different too. I don't know what your whitetail eat out there in Pennsylvania, if they're more forest scrubbing or whatever, but out here our whitetails are in the cornfields and corn fed.
Yep.
And so it's like it's pretty mild.
Yeah.
Mule deer can be a little gamey, but one thing that I've noticed over my course of hunting is that it depends on the state of the animal when you've shot it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What I have found, if you shoot a deer that's been being hunted, it's been chased a bit, or you wounded it and it took a while for you to take it down, that adrenaline really toughens the meat and or gives it a real gamey taste. If you shoot that animal and they die fairly quickly, you're gonna have the best tasting meat.
Interesting. Yeah. I think one of the things that I noticed is, well, number one, I probably shot a 2-year-old out there. Well, most of my whitetails are at least 4 or 5 that I'm killing on a buck basis, at least.
Man, this thing is so tender.
It was super tender, but it really did. And I don't know if that's because of the alfalfa and even the sage that they're eating or something, but it wasn't nearly as gamey as most of my whitetails. Then again, I kill a lot of mountain whitetails, so they're eating acorns and browse and
similar food.
Yeah.
But you also got to take a look at too. You were bow hunting, so you're not hunting them in the rut.
Exactly. Yeah.
A lot of guys out here, a lot of hunters are rifle hunters. There's and when our season comes around in first part of November, it's the rut a lot of times. And so now you also got a little that rangy,
Sure. Yeah.
It can taste kind of funky there too.
Well, and I'm sure if you go out and kill a 6 or 7-year-old mule deer, it'll be tough. I'll still eat it.
Yeah. Well, we're not hunting.
We do a lot of sausage.
But
yeah.
Sausage, yeah.
Most of everything, back straps, inner tenderloins, roast, were what we really took home from that. Yeah, and
dude, can you believe?
Great.
You remember I feel bad about this. I don't know how it happened. We left a full backstrap on my buck.
Yeah, we were just in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Well,
we just forgot it.
We had hiked.
Oh my god!
We had
I
hiked.
I know. It's like a cardinal sin, right?
Yeah, we had hiked, 3+ miles from the point of access to the river where these bucks had crossed in the morning. And Jared made a great shot on this thing.
I'd stalked one other buck twice on the way down in there. So we'd been hoofing.
And it was late. It was sunset. It was a beautiful time when we killed this thing. I've got pictures of it that I sent over to these guys.
We'll watch a video at some point here.
Yeah.
I do want to play that.
It was beautiful. But the hard part is, I would say we're fairly proficient at skinning and processing.
I would say extremely.
But when you're doing it on the ground, and again, these animals are big. I would say your buck was probably a 3-year-old. Is that what we were saying?
I think so.
And it's massive compared to most of the whitetail that I've killed.
Huge.
For sure.
Huge.
Like body wise, massive.
Yeah.
Significantly poundage bigger. And so you're on the ground trying to skin this thing and keep it clean, as well as we were caping yours too.
Yeah.
You know, and so you just get into the moment of like doing this, and it's been a long day already, and you've got to pack this thing out, you know, and I don't,
we were getting a little delirious. We're kind of in a rush. We were just super excited. Yeah. We just forgot about it. We flipped it over. We were about getting the cape off, and it wasn't until probably we got back. We might have been even driving home. I'm like, did we get that other?
We had already processed and everything.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, part of us was that we came out there the night before the opener, did our scouting at that time, thanks to the residents.
The whole thing we were kind of delirious on because it opened on a Friday, so we left Wednesday like afternoon, and then drove Wednesday evening all day Thursday. Got there Thursday like afternoon.
Yep. Set up.
It's just the two of us.
Scout.
So between the two of us, we've been driving for 22 straight hours.
Slept a couple hours each.
And then it's like right into hunting, and then we're hiking 5-10 miles a day.
Well, and we joked the whole way out there because we're like, dude, how cool is this going to be if we come back with 2 racks like in the back of this thing, right? Yeah. And I mean, we're going in blind. We don't know what we're getting into. And we did in the first 2 days. Like I shot mine Saturday afternoon. You shot yours Sunday.
I think the like where we were hunting and just the experience what's the word? It exceeded all of our expectations. Thank you.
Yeah,
for sure, it was awesome.
So I guess Marshall, kind of give us a little. The one thing that I'm interested in, just because we had such a cool experience, but like, give us a little bit of the background and even focus on North Dakota for this one. You know, obviously we talk about, you talk about Roosevelt and things north of where we are, and there's a lot of guys up there. We heard from the local guys, there's a lot of people that are elk hunting. They get the special North Dakota elk tags up that way as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, I mean, our expectations obviously going out there were just like, we want to kill a good mule deer buck, but I mean, we definitely saw some giants. I mean, is it reasonable to say that at least on a residential side, or resident side, not residential, that people can successfully kill some pretty big bucks in that western part of North Dakota in terms of mule deer?
Oh yeah, no, it's kind of a hidden gem. The Game and Fish Department's done a really good job in managing the mule deer, and especially like I had mentioned earlier, that we had 2-3 horrific winters back to back that basically we lost about 50% of the herd.
Wow.
And so they shut it down. And I remember going around on those advisory meetings, and, you know, I went probably to about 4 of those, and they had about 8 or 10 of those set up throughout the state after the second horrific winter. And we talked about, you know, we had hunters saying, shut the season down. Let's take a year off. You know, let's get these deer back and everything. And so they shut it down they shut it down for a year. They didn't even bring up the does, I think, for about 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
And, you know, to bring that population back up. So they've done a really good job on managing it. And, you know, we've had adequate moisture. You know, since that time, we've had some really good soft winters. Where it hasn't been really bad. We've had adequate rain, a lot of resources. We're seeing a lot of the does having twins. Whereas with mule deer, you know, the difference between mule deer and whitetail deer will bounce back a lot quicker because
very much
they average two fawns darn near every doe. Whereas mule deer, I want to say that average is like 1.2 or 1.4 or something like that.
Gotcha.
You know, and so they don't bounce back as fast. But we were seeing a lot of twins and everything out there. So we're getting a lot of good production. We're seeing a 25% increase year over year.
Wow.
With that limited hunting, that it allowed some of these bucks to get older and bigger. And so there's a lot of nice bucks out there. And every year I keep saying, God dang, that's the biggest buck I just saw. It's like this last fall, I was out there. And of course, the best way to see the biggest mule deer buck in your life is not to have a tag for it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And I had
make sure you get a flat tire.
Tag.
Make sure you run out of gas. Don't have a tag.
And I had this buck stand up, freaking 150 yards, not even 150 yards from me. I was way back in there, stood up, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a big buck. But I couldn't see him too well yet because the sun and everything like that. As soon as he crested the top of that hill, he had 2 drop tines on either side. He was big. That rack went past his rump by a good, 4 inches on either side. And I'm just like,
you have to drop a pin.
But no, there are some really nice bucks out there. We've had really good weather. Now, the concern that I have right now is we're in a drought. And last year it was drought conditions, but the animals are still doing fine. I'm really worried this year.
Okay.
I'm talking to landowners. I talked to one of our landowners out there 2 weeks ago, and he told me, he goes, Marshall, he goes, I've never seen it this bad. He goes, we had 4 inches of precipitation since October.
Wow.
That's it. I mean, we're North Dakota. You're supposed to have snow.
Yeah, I was gonna say feet of snow.
Yeah. And it's just, so I'm very, very concerned about, when you have bad, you don't have rain, you don't have adequate food sources.
Yep.
Your antler growth is not going to be optimum.
Yeah. Sure.
Now, granted, in North Dakota, there are spots, that are pretty good. You get, right now, southeastern part of North Dakota, which is whitetail country. There are some muleys over there. You're going to have beautiful racks over there. I mean, they've been adequate moisture. Way up to the northwest, up north of Williston and stuff, which is mule deer country too. They've had adequate moisture and everything, so they should be fine there. But going straight west here, I'm a little concerned.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big factor. I mean, whether you're talking whitetails in Texas or mule deer and stuff in the West, I mean, anytime you have a drought and affects the plant communities and stuff, you're going to have an effect. That's not what you want to see on antler size and body development and even fawn recruitment and stuff. So, hopefully here in the latter part of the spring, early summer, you guys get some rain that moves through because, and that's tough in those conditions anyways. Because, I mean, a lot of those places are very arid to begin with, So when you start to say, hey, we're also in a drought, it's like, whoa, that's not a good thing. Makes very much
water running is underneath,
Exactly. Well, and that's why, for our lease in South Dakota, the one thing that is nice is there are a lot of water sources on that property from a pronghorn and a mule deer's perspective. And that's definitely something that intrigues me.
Yeah, I wonder, it's probably just with an overflow, but there's a lake and a dam right next to this ag field. I wonder if they're like letting water out of that at any point and if that's helping the drainage beneath it.
Possibly.
Well, and that might be just a stock dam that's, just from drainage only. I don't know if there's a well there or anything or something good, but that's something you got to check out and stuff, especially later in the summer here.
Yep.
How it's going to be. Right now, I'm a little nervous.
Yep.
About how things are going to be. Then you're going to have the fire. We've had several wildfires now. They had to evacuate the town of Medora.
Wow.
Really?
They evacuated the town of Manning just last week, and a couple other little towns. I mean, it's just been really, really bad. And, fire is good. I mean, when it comes to
habitat
and stuff like that, it can be very good. We don't have the problems that some of the forests do, especially in the northwestern part of the country, where they suppressed them, and so now you just got
giant fuel loads. Yeah,
it explodes and goes nuts. Out here, it doesn't burn as hot and doesn't kill the seeds or anything like that. You get that first little rainfall, and boy, that's where the animals are going to be.
Yeah, it explodes.
So
the one thing that we saw out there, and we ran into, like I said, a few people that were pronghorn hunting and several people that were mule deer hunting, the residents next to us. But and again, it's probably coming from eastern U.S. and public lands and how many people we see deer hunting and stuff. But I didn't feel like the pressure was that bad at all out there.
I didn't either.
We definitely saw people hunting and we crossed people's paths. A lot of the same people that we'd seen the entire trip that we were out there.
Didn't seem like opening day was as big of a deal either. Like guys were just kind of rolling in throughout the week. They're like, just kind of made it down.
Well, you got to take a look at the population of bow hunters is, it's 10-15% of the hunters.
Right.
Then that's why I kind of pointed you down to that area.
Yep.
Because if you guys are, I think we're looking up there west of Watford City on the north side of the park.
Yeah, we were. That's where we initially
hammered. I mean, that's where everybody goes. And, so what you encountered down there would probably only be 25% of what you had encountered up
Interesting.
north.
And I assume if you were gun hunting, you would see guys everywhere.
And there were some. I mean, there was that private land guy that was kind of looking out over his field there.
Well, that was because he was outfitting some people in there.
Well, yeah.
Supposedly.
Somebody was parked in by those hay bales where you killed your buck the following day, who I think that outfitter was.
Oh, yeah.
Who was telling us about that? Oh, it was the guys that camped next to us. basically right down in there, there's a big chunk of private land where a lot of these bucks were held up, and it's like they know where the fence line is at. Yeah. And the landowner or the outfitter, I don't know who it was going out and
the outfitter,
like very actively patrolling it. In fact, there was a guy I think that was camping next to us that was on public. And he was like driving his truck, or he's walking up
the fence
line. And the outfitter came and just was paralleling him, like on his side of the private land, just like watching him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a big issue. Montana, it's really, really bad. But between public hunters and outfitters, that wall is so high right now. It's horrible.
Well, it's like the privatization of wildlife. Like, it's like, dude, if that deer wants to cross the fence on the public, like, let him. He can cross the fence on the public.
We had that problem last time I was out elk hunting. We were down south of Coal Strip there, close to the Wyoming border. And what would happen is that, in the morning they'd be down there by the river, and we were up high on some public land, and it's just a big 1 square mile. And this area has a really nice herd. So what would happen is the elk would go up during the daytime, up where we were, and past us. They'd go through where we were, and then at night they'd come down to the fields and down to the river there. And what he would do is, it took me half a day to figure out what the hell he was doing. But what he was doing is that he had, hunters down there and everything like that. You hear boom, 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 boom. Next thing you hear these trailers going back and forth on this road where you'd be lucky to hear one vehicle a day going back and forth. These trailers with empty metal and stuff in them rattling and making all kind of noise. So what they would do, there'd be like 5 or 6 of them going back and forth over this 2-mile stretch to prevent the elk from crossing back over.
That's insane, man.
Yeah. So they call it harboring. And that happens a lot. It's happened to me on 3 occasions where literally the herd of elk, there was up by the Muscle Shell. I was hunting up there, and they wanted to go back up into the hills, and they would literally drive back and forth in front on the county road there with 5, 6 vehicles back and forth, get out and wave their arms and stuff like that to prevent the animals from coming across. And it's illegal.
They don't care.
But it's called harboring.
Wow.
Montana's really, really bad.
It was just this one guy he was doing it because he had that land. He had a hunter.
Do it to us.
Well,
we actually shot a buck. Not far from his property. Just
the one I killed.
100 yards
from
the fence line, maybe.
But we had one overlook where we were watching these alfalfa bottoms. It's public land. You're parked on public, watching over private, and watching these deer go into public where Jared killed his buck. And he pulled up right next to us, kind of like, hey, what are you guys doing? And it's like, yeah, like there's obviously a ton of deer in this alfalfa field we're watching. Yeah, remember no, you weren't there. I think you were out hunting, and I went to park by him. And he's like, what do you?
Yeah, you told me about this.
I was like, I'm just watching to see where these deer are going. I think these ones are going to head up that coulee, and, we're going to come in from the other side. And he's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, so-and-so watches this pretty tight. So, and I'm like, yeah, dude, I know you're the outfitter. Like, don't tell me. Like, I know it's you. I've seen your truck up here and driving people in and out. I was like, yeah, I know where the private lines are. I said, I already killed mine. I'm tagged out. I said, I'm just watching for some of these other guys. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, just don't go down in here. So-and-so gets pretty crazy about it. And I'm like, and it's like, he acts like he owns the place.
Yeah, they do. They'll try to scare you off too, off of public land or
sure. Yeah.
If they lease grasslands, they try to scare you off of that, saying it's their property. And, there's some that are just crazy. I know, like up in Montana, up by Lewistown, we'd hunt up there. I don't know if you ever heard of the Wilkes brothers or the Wilf brothers.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, the Wilf brothers. Yeah, they're the billionaire fracking guys. Anyway, they have purchased so much land up there. They literally had a fleet of white Dodge pickups driving around these guys to ensure that you are not even stopping on the county road. They try to push you out. And then anywhere there's like a access to, there's this one spot on the Red Canyon Road or whatever. There's about 10 yards where it actually meets the road, the public land, and you can walk in there and you kind of curve up. It's like a big giant L and get up in there. They will literally have a guy parked there trying to push people off, saying you're not allowed. That's
I think that's part of the fun.
It's really bad.
shoving
They'll
those
chase
guys
you,
out of the
follow
way.
you around, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, and obviously, like, that was the only encounter we had with that guy. Although I think we saw him one other time when we were stopped on the county road watching some of those real big muleys come off of the private into the fields, which we weren't doing anything. But like that one guy, I mean, literally, you park and there, you know, he didn't hike a ton back in, but he was a quarter to half mile walking back in, and that guy's just driving alongside him on the other side of the fence, and it's like, wow, like, that's just how you are? Like, that's how you're going to be about this thing?
Just being a prick.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just the way it is, you know, and I hate that people take it so serious. I understand it because he's running a business there. He's moving some people through there on an outfit. He's hoping that and listen, I mean, we saw
a pile of deer come up.
Well, he's sitting in a box blind on the ground. I think they had a
corn pile out front of it.
Yeah, some kind of corn pile or feeder there.
Is that legal? I don't know for a fact that there was corn pile. It was private land.
Yeah.
It's pretty, you know, you're not supposed to what do you call it? Bait.
Yeah.
Anything like that. But when you got a farming operation and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. He must not have had a corn pile then.
There was an old feeder there, I think.
They could have corn pile there for that specific purpose, but
let's put it this way. There was a box blind in a place that didn't seem like there was any really reason to have a box blind, and those deer were coming right through there.
And there was a camera right on it. He had a camera on something there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was very visible from the road. It's not like he was trying to hide it. So I assume he was legal.
Maybe.
I would think.
But yeah, I mean, it's such a weird thing. And I mean, but then again, you get back in there. The one thing that I'd be interested in trying, we can't do it in South Dakota, so it would be North Dakota, and we would have to get out of our kind of planned comfort zone here, is like to potentially get up into that public north of where we're at and like hike it deep. Like what could be in some of those drainages, you know, that are deep out in there. Like, could you come across a like Marshall said, giant double drop type buck?
Well, we're considering. We still got a lot of planning on what this trip's going to look like, but we're considering bringing some camping gear and like spending some nights out there. Cause I mean, where I killed my buck, it was like a 7-mile hike all the way down in to where all these bucks were at. We had talked about, and it seems replicable. Like it seems like we could do that time and time again. We had almost talked about just hiking down in there with a bunch of camping gear, get out of line of sight and stuff, and just camp there for, you know,
I think the downfall of that would be is if per what Marshall's saying in terms of drought, is if we're in some like red flag fire, you know, warning.
You're not going to be able to have fires or anything like that.
You'll freeze to death out there.
That's always a concern too, is that, you know, hunter or landowners are going to be less. I mean, we lost a plots when we thought we had this new plots coming in, and it would have prime location. They bailed out of it because they felt that, well, this year's drought risk is too high. We don't want hunters in there starting a wildfire.
Yeah. I mean,
you know,
it's reasonable.
Whether it was from an arrow hitting a rock and sparking, or if it was, you know, but
you know, that second stock that I put on that buck.
Yeah.
I found an arrow like buried in the ground. Yeah. Somebody had shot at something up there. I just found an arrow. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, that was an odd place to find. Although that buck knew exactly where he was going when I watched him get up under that ledge, and how he could get back up out of there.
I'm pretty optimistic about our ability to replicate what we did there in North Dakota. It should be relatively the same movements and stuff, I would think.
Yep, you know what we're looking for.
Yeah, they're very habitual.
Yeah,
you know, they do the same things a lot of times. They like their favorite spots. They'll always go back to those ones as long as they're not being pushed too hard.
We know where to look now.
I mean, I'll tell you, and not that we can hunt them, but like on that private, I mean, we saw legit a couple 170 pluses on that. One group had like 19 bucks.
We do need to look at a map
together.
a little closer and just see if we can find out a way to cut them off, or like maybe where they're coming from.
Yeah, we were close. I mean, the funny thing is the one day, I think it was the day I shot mine that evening, or the next, it was that evening. We watched these bucks literally just bedding on an open hillside on private land. Remember that when we were getting attacked by the flying ants or whatever the heck they were? We're like literally just watching these things, just like lounging out, you know, $10, two or three shooters, just like laying in the middle.
They could see us on public. They're like, "What's up?"
Yeah, we're not coming over there.
Not coming over there.
Yeah, what are you doing over there? That's just how it is, man. It's kind of wild to see that. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, no, I'm on it.
Me too, man. I was literally about to just walk away from say.
We don't do it live anyway, so we'll do it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I've got a question about. I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, Marshall, but regulations in South Dakota. Can you use do you know if you can use an earpiece? Like, can you communicate?
I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
We talked about that last year, I think, when we were figuring out where it was legal to use it and not. And it is, I think, very state specific on that. It is.
Yeah, because North Dakota's legal. Yeah, it's legal. We looked into that before we did it.
But I think we talked about it. Marshall, Montana was one you can't.
Definitely cannot.
No communications on that side.
Communicate or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know it's even from whitetails. Like I know some of the bigger states, like Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, like where deer drives are in. Some of those states you can. Some of those states you absolutely cannot. Because we talked about that a lot in terms of like spotting for someone, right? Versus like having to be together. Like, could I be in a vantage point spotting for Jared and have him walk?
I was going to see if you can find a regulation. I'm curious. That'll change the way that we're doing things here.
Yeah, I don't think you can in South Dakota, from what I remember.
Really?
Yeah, which I don't know.
That's where the hand signals come in.
Is he pulling his belt? Is he pulling his belt or taking a pee? I can't tell. No, I think that, from our standpoint, Marshall, just number one, having the Mule Deer Foundation as a big resource is clutch for anybody coming from the east looking to hunt, whether it's Dakotas or even further west, obviously.
And you guys are obviously doing a lot of a lot for us non-residents to be able to access.
Yeah, with the plots programs and stuff like that.
So
absolutely. And I think the other thing that was neat, like I know I saw not too long ago, it looked like you guys were doing, I don't know if it was the Gunapalooza or something like that, but you even have like, was it like a statewide like mule deer rifle tag or something that you're
we just did that drawing on Saturday.
So like, that's crazy. Because I mean, I don't think people understand, like those are extremely difficult to come by.
Yeah. It's a golden ticket for us. It's, here in North Dakota, you have to put in for a specific unit.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to put in for a unit, and then you put in for what species or sex.
Mm-hmm.
And you get two choices, and then you have a second unit. So if you're up there around the park, we always just call it the park there around Teddy Roosevelt National Park. There are people that I know that I've been putting for 12 years and still haven't gotten drawn.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's rifle.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of younger, they've switched over to archery and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tough to get those tickets. So this ticket here, it's a statewide mule deer tag, and you can hunt any unit in the state, any weapon. And, I always joke around with it. You can hunt any unit except for Teddy Roosevelt National Park and Dakota Zoo. Everywhere else,
Those are the two outs. Yeah.
Yeah, those are 2 outs. And so I always talk to the people after the hunts are over and stuff like that. And so unfortunately, the gentleman who won it last year never harvested a deer. He missed 2 times. And
it's about all you get.
Prepared.
Yeah, just shake your head like, oh my goodness. And then the guy before that, he's been a long time. He's a life member of Mule Deer Foundation. He won it. He's from Lisbon and eastern North Dakota, and he won it. And that guy's he's a hunting fool.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent, oh my gosh, 2 full weeks out there.
Wow.
He was east of where you guys were. He was on the other side of 85, northeast of Bowman there. And he was really struggling with fog. They had a real problem with fog, and he'd spot these big monsters, and he couldn't
get on them
in the fog. And they were crisscrossing between private and
jeez.
But he ended up actually shooting his buck in Wishick, which is east of Bismarck.
Holy cow!
About 80 miles. And he shot a nice buck. It wasn't a huge trophy area that I got, but it was really wide, and so it was a nice buck, and so it's been interesting,
That is
the
a golden
mule deer are
ticket.
kind of moving a little bit to, you hear pockets like up northeast of Bismarck. Here is a town called McCluskey up there around the Sheridan County area and stuff like that. They're getting a nice herd up there.
Really?
So really nice stuff. Yeah.
Interesting.
But they're predominantly basically west of the Missouri River.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the further west you go. So if you take a look at North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, you're looking at maybe 1/3 of the state is prime mule deer country.
Interesting.
To the west, on the west side of the states there.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised at, 20 miles east of here or west of here, there's pockets of really good mule deer.
Huh. I think we saw, I mean, when we were going through, obviously, the closer we got to our destination, the more mule deer like it felt.
It was literally like when we got into the town, like, because we're looking the whole way, we're like, oh, this looks like it, looks like it. And then it's like, oh, when you get there, no,
this is what it looks like. And that's kind of an interesting thing. And that's why, like, when we look at South Dakota, and I spent, when I worked for Cabela's corporate, I spent a lot of time in Sidney, Nebraska. So that western part of Nebraska there was like major mule deer area. And it was so funny because, like, I was a whitetail guy, and, like, they were like, oh, you want to come hunt whitetails? Like, knock yourself out. And I was like, oh, cool. Cause, like, I hunt mule deer out here. They're like, get out. Like, don't. No, you can't. And
go ahead, hunt whitetail. We don't care. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Like, we don't care, but don't touch my mule deer. You know, mule deer and pheasants were like the big no-nos out there. And it's so funny because, like, again, we're looking at it coming in, and it's such a different way of hunting and such different terrain and stuff. And yeah, you see some of these overlapping areas, but, like, you know, like you said, when you get into it, you're like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And then almost in a weird way, you're like, oh, like there's one there, you know, and it's
so bizarre. Yeah. Just, we grew up, you know, looking for whitetails and even spotlighting at night, you know, where it's legal and stuff. And just to go out and experience there's a whole new species of animal, but it's still a deer. It's just like, man, they're bigger and they move different and stuff. It's just very cool. It's just like the flip side.
You just have to put miles on and find them.
Deer hunting.
So when you talk,
we always say you got to get your eyes on.
That's it.
And that's what my dad used to say. We got to get our deer eyes on. So we go out pheasant hunting or grouse hunting, and we practice getting our deer eyes on.
Yeah.
Basically looking and watching for deer, you know, and their movement.
Well, dude, I will say one of the things that I think maybe be the reason that I killed my buck is those pair of binoculars that my dad bought me for
those stabilizers.
I've got a pair of these, they're Canon, and they have it's called Stable Eyes technology, and they reduce the vibration. So like a standard pair of optics, you know, is just, it moves they have. This completely takes it out. They're so smooth, and you can see so far. We were probably watching them deer at a mile away.
Plus, yeah.
And I think those are what enabled a lot of guys use spotting scopes and stuff, which I despise. I'm not a fan of those spotting scopes, but these were an excellent option.
Well, just because from a mobile standpoint,
throw them right up in the truck, and we could watch, you know, a mile away and then make a move. And those were great.
I think it's and again, that's kind of where we were. So I guess when you start talking about the park, or say Teddy Roosevelt, so the national park area, there's a certain portion of that, like, you can't hunt, right? Shut off, no hunting, basically, correct?
Yeah, the
vast majority. And so people are just literally in a huge density, I assume, just trying to surround that because it's like a giant sanctuary.
Exactly. Yeah. That's because the animals can go in the park and they're not shot at or anything like that.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah, you got some really good stuff. There's a lot of private landowners around there too that pretty much boarded up, and so the animals have a lot of area to move and everything. So, but there's also, especially on the west side, the north side, there's Forest Service land, national grasslands and stuff too that people will really work and hunt.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's some, because of that, you in and around that area, you probably have some older animals, some bigger bucks into that, but you also, that comes with higher hunting pressure and everything around that too.
It's more accessible as well. You know, it's like when I told you guys, I said, you know, you're driving this far, put on another 90 to 100 miles.
Yep.
And you're going to be really happy where you are.
Yep.
Because a lot of folks, they, you know, especially here in North Dakota, the bow hunters and stuff, they drive out to Medora, and that's usually the furthest west they go.
Right.
You know, they might hunt the west side of the park, you know, but they're either going north or just a little bit south, but they don't seem to go past the, you know, than that. And you drive another, 25 miles to beach, drop down south or go up north, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean. I know from the people we talk to, a lot of people seem to head into that park area, that Watford City area. That just tended to be where it seemed like they would gravitate towards. Did hear some people going northwest, like up towards the border more. But yeah, it just kind of weird to see how people are doing that. The other notable thing that, from our side that we saw is, man, we saw some giant whitetails out there as well.
Mm-hmm. Saw a couple booners.
Like real big. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just in different areas, that obviously those ones from a spot and stock archery seemed like mission impossible. Like those things, they saw you and they were 7 valleys over by the time you would even make a move on them.
Maybe more even access. I mean, it's bizarre. And Western animals just seem easier to hunt. Like, I just think like they were just pouring out of that bottom. Like if you could just go and set up a hay bale blind, like you'd almost certainly kill one of those things.
Oh, in that alfalfa bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah, on private.
And they were getting hunted. There was that guy that like just didn't seem like he knew what he was doing. He's like, yeah, I've got a couple tree stands down there. It's like, well, if you hunted one of them, you'd certainly kill something.
You'd be done. Yeah, you'd be done. Yeah, it is. It's such a different, and it's really, it's so neat for us coming from the east and what we normally deal with in pressure. And then obviously getting the hunt, the beginning of September is just a huge attraction on that. And the weather was great when we were out there in terms of conditions.
It was awesome. Right after, it was really nice up until right after we tagged out. The next day was like rain, and everybody else was like, dude, we're packing up and heading out because it's just going to get sloppy and slick. And we're like, cool, we're tagged out. We're cooking the rest of our eggs and drinking the rest of our beer.
And we're out.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing you don't want to be out there when it's wet, boy. I tell you that clay.
Yeah, that's what they were saying.
Slicker and snot.
Yeah, that's what it kept seeming like. So, yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. I know we've continued to follow kind of the Mule Deer Foundation page for the Dakotas and stuff, and we're going to kind of keep sticking to that as kind of our resource here over the next few months as we get closer to time frame to be out there. Hopefully, it sounds like you guys need some rain. We get some rain here over the next few months to help that out too, and and just kind of keep doing our thing and, putting in our research and just, can't do anything until we get boots on the ground out there.
I mean, it sounds like, how you feeling about South Dakota at this point?
Pretty good.
Feel like we're doing it?
Probably.
Yeah. I think so too.
I
almost bought the tag the other day. I was like, I better.
As long as the landowner gives me electric and water. If he doesn't do that, then that's...
I have to figure that out. Yeah. We're trying to figure out how to bring these electric bikes with us, especially for South Dakota.
Yeah.
Just to be able to navigate that property more quickly.
Yep.
It's not a deal breaker by any means.
We'd have to check regulations in North Dakota for public land.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you could have them on there.
I don't know how much we'd use them either. It's a little more treacherous country.
I feel like we'd hit a shed and blow one out.
Or a small stick.
Or just leave it in the bottom.
Yeah, rock.
I'd hate to have to push that thing out of there.
Yeah. Oh, I'll make Colton can carry it out on his back.
Yeah, I don't know how it is with the bikes. I haven't looked into that.
Yeah.
I know like a lot of the plots land, it's no motorized access. Do they consider that a motorized access? Because there's a lot of people out there, hunters, that think that their ATV is not, not excluded, or
it's foot powered.
Yeah, it's like no, sorry, that's a motorized vehicle. Well, it's not a pickup or a car. Well,
I think on Rogue we actually have a resource on there that'll tell us by state what we can and can't do. So we'll
you just have to go to their website, state website, and take a look.
It's usually a wattage thing. So if it's under X amount electric, first of all, if it's electric and then under X watts, you should be able to use it. Like all your ATVs, UTVs, and stuff like that are out usually.
You also have to take a look at the U.S. the U.S. Forest Service too, because those grasslands.
Yeah,
that's a different animal right there.
Yep.
And those will all be different. Every one of them will be different.
Yep. So we'll have to take a look at both of those and see what we can cover on it.
The one thing that would make me feel better about South Dakota would be more options. Like if we could find another, like get permission somewhere or something.
I have a feeling that based on what Marshall's saying and just the research around Hardin County and especially western Hardin County, it seems tight.
Tough to find, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like if there is private, people are probably hunting it. Would be my guess. Or an outfitter. That Doll outfitter, whoever it is, seems like they have quite a bit under their control as well in Hardin County. And I don't know how many.
I almost wonder if, they run it under a deal. Where's Jeff from? Jeff was Mossback Outfitters. You know Jeff, right?
Oh, he's out of Utah.
Yeah, Utah.
Out of Utah. Do they have any ground in South Dakota?
I'm not aware of any. I know he predominantly does his stuff in Utah, Colorado,
Nevada,
Wyoming, and he used to do some bear hunting up in Montana, but I don't know if he's still doing that.
Yeah. we'll see. We'll take another look at it and make a.
In fact, it's spring bear right now in Montana.
I was gonna say, yeah, spring bear is probably cranking in a lot of places right now, or about to at some point. But
yeah, my chapter chair here in Bismarck and one of the volunteers, committee members, they're both out there right now hunting together. In Montana. That's one of the neat things, about Mule Deer Foundation, the chapters and stuff like that. You get people who never knew each other ever before, probably would never ever cross paths.
Right.
Working together on, fundraising, and both have a common desire for habitat and mule deer and stuff like that. And so many of my chapters, I can take a look at these people that are, lifelong friends now. You got guys that are from Fargo hunting out by Dickinson and talking to those guys, and
that's really cool. I mean, I know I look forward to getting the Mule Deer Foundation publication in the mail every couple months or whatever it is. It's awesome to get a hold of that and be able to look through and see what the different states are doing and what conservation efforts.
Get a chapter going out there.
I know, right? We should. I'm sure there's, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many people hunt mule deer around here, like not like here, but travel.
I'm sure there's several of us.
I mean, we're pretty hardcore when it comes to bow hunting in this area. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, you've got some friends in southwestern Pennsylvania.
You find these guys that are into mule deer hunting, and you'd be amazed at how many other people they know.
Yeah.
Like the guy up there on Mountaintop, he knows, I bet you 50 guys in southern state New York there, Jersey, they're in Pennsylvania and Virginia, that they all kind of known each other or through business or whatever like that. And they all hunt out west. And
interesting.
Yeah. And they may not go every year, but they're going every other year. And I mean, once you get the mule deer in your blood, it's pretty hard to shake it.
Agreed.
We are have that issue right now. Yeah.
Well, Marshall, you've got some friends in southwestern Pennsylvania here. So if you guys make it out here in like August timeframe, we'd love to have you in office here for a day if you can spare it.
Yeah, and I'll have our conservation director with us.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man.
He's been doing some really good stuff. I don't know if you've heard about the migration corridor and stuff in Wyoming. And he was able to get a grant. Gosh, it was $900,000 or $1 million. I can't remember. And he's got a couple other ones, and he's been doing a lot of stuff with the stewardship stuff with the U.S. Forest Service. And he's a Pennsylvania boy too.
Oh yeah,
nice.
We'd be all for that, man. Yeah, that'd be cool to have you guys down here and kind of revisit, especially right before we're about to take off.
That's what I'm saying. That'll be a couple weeks before we get out of here.
Yeah,
crack a beer and
that'd be really cool to do that.
To give you an update.
So,
I know our numbers are looking good. We had another nice winter both in North Dakota and South Dakota, and
just need some rain.
That's going to be an issue at all.
Just need a little rain. That's it.
Yep. Yeah. If you want some growth, antler growth, and some good recruitment, you need some rain.
Okay.
Cool, man. Well, Marshall, I guess if anybody wants to find you and specifically some of the chapters and stuff that you guys are doing, does each of the states have a Mule Deer Foundation page or just like Facebook pages and stuff, I guess, to go to? Is that
the easiest thing is just go right to our website. That's muledeer.org.
Right.
And you'll be able to click on a map, and there'll be chapters that show the United States. And you just click on the state you're interested in, and it'll show who the regional director is. It'll show who the state chair is. And then you can click on the communities. It'll have like little emblems where each chapter is.
I think the one disclaimer on that is like you want to sign up to the chapter local to where you live, not necessarily where you're hunting, correct?
It's totally up to you.
Okay.
I think we signed up local to where we hunt.
Your area.
Yeah, we signed up for something out there
in Bismarck,
North Dakota. And then I think it was you that was like, well, you should probably get signed up for in your area because these are the people, I guess, we're more likely to.
Apparently, we need one in the area is what is the issue.
Yeah.
A Pennsylvania chapter.
But and then each one of our chapters in each state, we have our own Facebook pages as well.
Yep.
Cool.
And then I've been kind of basically the contact with regards to any growth to the east.
Cool.
And so I'm looking forward to getting some. I know there's one just outside of the Beltway we're going to be doing, and then 2 to 3 in Pennsylvania. We were kicking that around last summer.
Yeah,
we were going to do that, and then the COVID hit, and so that kind of derailed everything there. So
awesome. Well, if nothing else, we'd love to help promote the fact that you're getting those chapters going and stuff, and so that's
what we can involved. Offer. Yeah, for sure. Well, we appreciate all the help, Marshall. Be awesome to have you back out here in August before we kind of take off for that first big trip for us, and love to have the conservation director as well on that. And if anybody's listening and looking for information or figuring out, check out muledeer.org and and reach out to these guys and get your hunt plan, man. Not going to do it on the couch.
Heck yeah.
Yep.
All right, Marshall, we appreciate it, man. Thanks for having you on.
All right, buddy. Take care.
We'll talk soon.
See you, buddy.
Thank you. See ya.
Cool to see, man. It's one of those things again, the resources are out there, whether it's Mule Deer Foundation, state of North Dakota or South Dakota's game and fish departments, like you got to find them, and it's not going to be easy. You're probably going to have to call them. Who knows? Maybe, last year we were really lucky in North Dakota last year because we put in individually last year, both got drawn. This year we put in as
it's a
group based, so it made a lot more sense on that side. But honestly, I still don't even know how that works because there's some states where it's like, oh, you have still only one entry, but you're a group. It's not, but Kansas, you get individual entries even though you're part of a group. So it's just really weird. I mean, there's still things that we don't know, but at the end of the day, just put in, just do it.
Yeah, just
see what happens.
I do think that some calls to the state agencies are super helpful.
Packed up.
Yeah, let's flip through some of these real quick. There's just like some pictures we sent in before the podcast here. Here's this A-frame that we rented.
Yeah, that's the old Rockwood, I believe.
That was in Fargo where we rented that? Is that
we
right?
did. We rented that in Fargo, driving the old Ford Ranger.
Was there not a...
I don't...
Why did I think it was the right idea to pull it all the way across the state?
It seemed like that was the place to pick it up based on timing of getting there. I don't think we looked past there either to see that.
We probably could have looked in Bismarck.
There she is.
There's a campground.
All set up. Listen, at the end of the day, this camper was perfect, man. It had heat and AC. We hooked up water.
I don't know about perfect. The A-frame didn't work, like the electricity.
No, it was the hydraulics.
Took some brute force.
We had to hand force that thing up. The hydraulics were not working, but we got it together, kept us dry. Perfect. This was base camp, right? It's the first day that we get there. At this point, nobody else was there. Son of a gun.
Yeah, these are those bucks that it's not a great picture, but
a couple of those ones we found that first evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, me putting stocks on. This is where I killed my buck, actually.
Yeah, just over that next coulee there, actually.
Yep.
In fact, Ian, who's running the camera? Yep, Ian, if you zoom all the way up and to the left, see that fence line?
Yep, that's the
fence
line.
to private, right where that guy was hoarding all them.
And it was crazy because you see it's just wide open, but you're literally looking in all these shade pockets for these bucks to be bedded in, and you can move right up on them,
Yeah.
Yep. Took the buck down. So he was actually back behind me there. We had looked down over that edge. He was laying up under the shade there, shot straight down, and he ran out in this field and died.
You were rocking your Predator.
That's right. Yeah. Private land. Yep. There she be. With velvet on. Son of a bitch.
With velvet on. At least we can remember him that way.
Velvet and drop tines. Yep. Carrying it out. You can see it was drying, like it was already starting to pill on the base, but it was still pretty velvety. So this is when we were starting to make our stock. The next day,
this is pretty
for Jared's
far
buck.
down in there.
Yeah, where I'm pointing towards the river, which is way the hell down there still. But we're checking all of this stuff because any of these little shade pockets, we're learning the whole time we're hunting out there that these deer could just be, held up in there.
That's what I thought was interesting about this hunt, because I went into it having watched a bunch of those high country, and those guys are real set on a certain basin, and they'll sit in just glass for hours and hours
until they see one.
So we're set up for that. Like I had my optics, I had tripod.
We needed to move.
Yeah, we were just like still hunting the whole time, basically.
And I mean, we covered ground, checking in. Yep. There's Jared's buck. Yeah, you can see the terrain behind it. And that buck was just laying on a hillside. There had to have been other bucks in there because we had watched, 7 or 8 bucks come across that river into this coulee area.
I don't think he was the biggest buck in that bottom.
But, I mean, once you see him, you kind of are committed to it, and you have to, stay on it and be like, that's the buck I'm going to approach, because who knows? These deer are just buried in some of these cracks, essentially, and crevices in the mountain that you just, you could walk right over them and not even see them.
Interesting to note just that, when the season date is really closely tied to when they're shedding out of velvet. So yours was
spot on.
I think it was maybe 30% of them were out.
Yeah, we saw the 2 bucks that we had jumped right before I shot mine. I think were both out.
They were?
Yeah, but that one was in.
The buck that I had stalked right before I shot this one
was in.
It was bigger than this one, I think.
Was in.
Was
velvet.
in.
for sure. Yeah, and he had not been out very long.
No.
Obviously packing out.
In fact, I thought it was really cool. You remember the birds like on his antlers?
Yeah,
picking off
picking the velvet off, sitting right on his back, picking it off. So yeah, this is where Jared had a shot. And Ian, if you zoom in towards the river,
see him back here,
and go up, right there. There's his body just kind of sitting there on the hillside there. Yep,
yeah,
right there. Go. And then that's the Little Missouri River.
So we watched him come across.
So we're on public here, and that's public in the background there. To the left, my left, that's, over there is where all the alfalfa fields and cattle fields were, that we would watch these deer from miles away, a mile away plus, feed, and then eventually drop into this river bottom, and we caught them by this little knob here.
I mean,
we saw them come up.
Can you just imagine, like, if we got to like roughly this point right here and get up to where you can see that alfalfa,
watch them coming in,
and be able to see that at first light, like where they come back in, there's no way you're not killing one right
there. Yeah, we're gonna have to hike back in there because I don't think the camp thing's gonna work. I bet they're gonna have fire warnings.
Yeah. So
we're just gonna have to hike back in there and be up in there. And again, we're saying this deer is a 3-year-old. We don't really know, but let's assume so. A giant body on these things. Mm-hmm. Like for a 3-year-old, that deer was 300 pounds.
I feel pretty confident that he was 3. Mm-hmm. No older than that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, classic. There's our processing. See the amount of fat on this deer? This is September 4th or 5th probably at this point.
Yeah. Just straight alfalfa gut.
Just straight alfalfa, man. Just hammering.
He's eating some sage too.
Yep. But yeah, you can see the Little Missouri in the river. We talked about potentially, just because it seems to be a kayaking down that thing.
Do you see?
We watched deer moving back and forth.
You see, looking at that though, I just think you're too close. I think you're.
Yeah. I mean, you just don't know where they're at. Plus, it's just another thing to haul ass out there.
You can skip this one. Yeah, just skip it. This one's just a quick landscape thing. See what else you got.
I sent some too in teams as well. The cool thing about it is when you start to look at, and again, we have no idea what the hell we're doing out here. Like, we've never been here. We've never seen that. And it's just like, there's us hiking out, sunset. Like, dude, that's freaking beautiful through there. And there's big bucks in there, but you're going to work for them. There's that group. So we're sitting across. You can barely see the fence line in the foreground, but we're across from these things. And these bucks are just out there feeding, looking right at us. We're actually walking at this point, and they're just, oh, cool, you're on public? Yeah, I'm on private. Mm-hmm. And we're talking within 100 yards, like these deer easily. But this is also where that outfitter would drive this to make sure that he pushed them further south, basically, and away from the grasslands, which is public open area.
The strategy there was like you could see all these bucks making it out to the fields at last light, and we're like, where are they coming from? So we drop back all the way back behind, and we could see all these coolies on private, and it's like, oh, there's one. There's a group. There's a bunch of them. We saw a bunch of bucks that night.
And I mean, they come from a pretty far distance to get up into these feeding fields, these wheat fields, and eventually the alfalfa fields.
Probably half mile.
But the crazy thing is they're actually, from where these bucks are, there's a couple really good draws of cover there, but there's actually a lot of cover on the public. I easily think these bucks are probably at some point hopping that fence and being on public. You just have to catch it at the right time.
Yeah, I agree.
You're 100 yards from killing a 150 every time. Mm-hmm. It's just, do they jump or not? Mm-hmm. So here's what these draws look like.
Where is that?
This is when we went way out to hunt. And we saw that giant whitetail. I was watching those 2 or 3 mule deer bucks at that far grouping of bushes and stuff.
Yep.
And so I'd set up here, and there's just a giant trail. You can kind of see it in this bottom. Giant trail that just ran this bottom. And I assume these bucks are just moving up and down, but I was watching those bucks way out there. And there ended up being one buck that was probably a 3-year-old, I bet. But we kind of looked at him. And then we saw that guy like walking way out in here. But
beautiful country, though.
We saw more big. There's that
buck. There's yours.
Yep. Drop tine on the right side.
Very cool.
We saw more whitetails out there than we did muleys. It definitely got a little bit more sparse in terms of what we were seeing. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sure.
You may have got 1 or 2 from me as well, Ian. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's it.
There you go. This is my recovery.
You look stoned.
That's how. Yeah. There we go.
What are we doing? The recovery?
The recovery. Right, we're recovering. We don't have to go far.
Do I need to recap in here? Shot a big buck. I was standing standing right on this ledge. He was right on this bottom.
Oh.
And we came from that red rock. Do you see the red rock?
Yeah.
I freaking blitzed it. From the time that he closed this distance to this distance, 15 yards, I closed 150.
We're also 4 miles from the vehicle.
Also as far in public as you can go.
All right, man. Let's go get him.
Let's go
I
get
can
him.
see rack already, dude. So that's a great sign.
No camo required.
Dude, that is a big muley. Yeah, oh yeah, there he goes.
Some blood there.
Yeah, man. How hard was it to find blood in this? It sucked it in.
Oh yeah, look how hard that is to see.
Yeah, see him
Sucks
there.
it right up.
Bone dry. Well, he wasn't pouring, but could have been the differences in there.
Oh, I hope we never
my
have to
gosh,
blood
dude,
trail
look
here.
right there. Yeah, but I mean, both of ours went down in eyesight, which was nice.
Yeah.
That is a pig, man. Oh my god, dude. What a pig.
Fresh out.
That's awesome. How cool is that?
Man. He's still got a little velvet right on the back here. I gotta tell you, I didn't think that, look at, he's still eating. I didn't think that we'd be, look how big he is.
Like I couldn't even finish it. I was like, what was it trying to say?
Yeah, his body was enormous, man.
Those are
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Every bit of 14.
Yeah, 14 inches. What do you think he is? Probably mid 140s?
Yeah, I'd say probably 145 to 148.
Awesome.
What a
Ended
toad
up being
of a body,
140.
I think we do a cool pan here, man. This where we're at, like where this happened. You can hear that wind just humming too out there. But like where we're standing was like it literally did exactly like we thought was gonna happen. Here's where we're at. Yeah, there you go. This is the public side.
Oh,
You guys can see right here. That is the Little Missouri River coming down.
we're going back there, man.
Alfalfa on the other side.
4
So
months.
these bucks are.
I mean, look at
laying
these
up in
bluffs,
these
though.
Bluffs,
Like,
basically.
and that's some serious
Comebacks.
terrain to get up in there.
And then you end up with this.
He did not like that rage. Look at what he was eating here. I don't know what that is. Sage, I guess.
We watched this deer for what?
Look at, he's got a low brow tone right there.
A good 45 minutes, at least.
See that velvet on the back?
Oh yeah. Those twos.
Good spread. I mean, what is he, 18?
That's awesome.
Pretty cool.
Really cool, man. It's man, it's so rewarding to like literally you drive 25 plus hours out there. You don't know what you're getting into. It's cool to get back to the roots of like we got to learn this thing. We've got to understand where these deer move, and then we got to figure out how to stalk on them and hunt them and approach them.
I just had so many wins. Like we were just succeeding at it.
And the weird thing is like you start thinking back, like
if you jump back into teams, Ian, I think
probably have a couple
Jeremy
more.
sent some other pictures there too.
yeah, so there's our processing table, which that was clutch too. Look at that meat. That's perfect. We so we got there that Thursday night, right? Friday's the next one. There's those bucks that we put the first stock on, which that one was a toad. He didn't have any fours.
No, but I was getting ready to shoot him.
That was a monster.
I think
yeah.
he's mature. Here,
Oh,
you can just
100%.
hold up for right there, Ian.
The one thing that I thought was interesting is, so, you know, we get there the night before, we scout, all right? Can't hunt till noon, so we drive around Friday morning.
Which we didn't know.
We didn't know.
We're getting ready. We're like, hey, if we see a buck, we just
jump out and go.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, you got to wait till noon, which I thought they were pulling. They're like, let's jack the non-residents around. Yeah, guys, you can't hunt till noon,
all right, buddy.
sucker. And then it's like, oh shit, like, well, no, we can't hunt till noon.
Yeah.
So we just drive around. We find those bucks. We make that stock. But we didn't kill anything first day. Saturday morning, we headed to way north. That's when we went and looked where we found that whitetail. That was Saturday morning. I don't know why we left that area.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. Because I still have my bow. I was still hunting.
The following day?
Yeah. Because I was still hunting.
Well, because the first day you stalked.
Yep.
And then I stalked those bucks that evening.
No deer killed Friday.
And then we headed straight north?
Saturday morning, we just drove. We drove way north, went way up into that back because we knew that there was now deer in that alfalfa, and we found that other alfalfa north. So we drove way north, struck out, that afternoon we came back, and that's when I killed my buck.
Really?
Saturday afternoon. Saturday evening, we drove around a little more.
Maybe it was Saturday evening. I put this.
It was Saturday evening.
What do we see Saturday evening? Just more of the same.
More of the same. Sunday is when we got onto those deer and decided, hey, we're going to be gone the rest of the day to make this stock in. You killed Sunday evening. Monday morning, we packed up.
That's what I love about...
Like, you think about it, I'm like, whoa. Because I'm looking at that picture. I'm like, when the hell did we go clear north to look at that stuff? And it's like the next morning. And I still don't know why we did that. Because we were coming back from that when we saw that real big one up on the hill. That was...
No, that was that same first morning. That was that Friday morning.
When we were just scouting?
Yeah, that's when we saw like everything. Because we saw that other
140. That one right out in the field with the does and stuff.
We saw him drop off. We saw a bunch of bucks out in the field, and we saw that big one. And then we kept going north, and it just got less and less.
Yep.
So we came back. We had this one that you stalked, pegged. We're like, hopefully he's there.
Yeah, we know where he's at.
And he was. But he gotten up and moved down in there. But dude. That's
a lot happened in like 3 days. That's what I'm saying.
What's fun about these mule deer hunts is like you can make them go faster because you can actually get up and go to these animals. It's not like you have to get in a tree stand and just wait them out.
Well, and that's the weird thing about, I think, South Dakota that we feel, I'm excited about it, don't get me wrong, but we feel a little restricted in that, like, we can't just go. We have this property, and if they're not there, they're not there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the hard part. Whereas if it's
I'm going to feel bad if we get there
and there's just not
like you paid for the thing and it's not what we
like want. I say, you paid for it.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, it is what it is. I think at the end of the day, the Dakota Double sounds like it's a good adventure.
It will be an adventure.
We'll get this stuff knocked out with the landowner and figure it out. But I think that would be a cool trip. And again, worst comes to worst, we're out there the 1st and 2nd because we can't hunt North Dakota yet. It's no good. We drive 2 hours and we're ready to hunt North Dakota opening day. And at least that's part of it. And Colton's going to be there documenting the whole thing, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm excited about it.
Let's flip through the rest of these pictures real quick. There's not that many more of them. But. Is that
my God!
Tenderloins, right?
That's tenderloins with grilled onions.
No. Yeah. Brussels
and wild rice.
I was like,
dude, that was the dinner, man.
I was like the bitch of kitchen. I like. He's like, you stay inside and cook the rice. I'll be cooking. I'm gonna be cooking the tenderloins on the fire.
I'm gonna be cooking the meat on the open fire.
The whole week was like that.
Oh, that looks amazing.
I made those Brussels sprouts too.
Oh, there they are.
Those were pretty good. Do you know what? I've made that recipe since. We forgot to get
We used the raspberry vinaigrette when we were out there.
Vinaigrette, and it was pretty dang good.
There's the tender boys on the open fire. Oh, that was spectacular. We were starving too. Oh. Double racks in the back coming home.
Yeah.
We were jammed in there too. We'll have to have a little bit better.
Was that a Ford Ranger?
That was the Ford Ranger that we took out there.
So small.
Yeah,
that drive home was rough, man. I was pretty delirious by the time I got home.
I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the blood on the ground. It's just amazing that country, how it soaks up. And that's, that's the nice thing about out there is it's so open that you can have eyes on those deer. But ultimately, like, if you have to track one, that's tough.
That's why you see guys shooting them and then running up over the hill to see where they
got to
go.
get eyes on them, man. Because if you have to track one, it's going to be really, really difficult. But you also can see for miles, so keep an eye on them, at least see where they disappeared to. But yeah, man, I'm excited. Appreciate Marshall joining us this week. He's really the guy who got us into the right area to have success in North Dakota, and probably the reason we're going back is because we had that success. And we'll take a hard look at South Dakota here. I think it's definitely an option and likely something that we'll embrace here once we call the landowner and kind of get some more details on it. But regardless, one of the things that we have to look at is we're going to North Dakota for sure. Mm-hmm. Whether we end up in South Dakota as well as part of the trip, that'd be awesome. But we're hunting mule deers in North Dakota, and that's the way we're looking at it.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
Yeah, man. So want to appreciate everybody listening to HUNTR Podcast this week. If you haven't, make sure you tune back and check out Dr. Bronson Strickland, Jeff Sturgis, Bill Winke. We've got some pretty badass content back there from those guys that'll keep you busy for several hours and again, appreciate everybody for engaging with us and commenting. This thing's going, man. We're growing at this point, which is kind of a cool feeling of just setting out and having some discussions with people that are passionate about the same stuff we are.
Absolutely. It's been a blast.
So, but we'll catch you next time on the Hunter Podcast.
Later.
Take me